Alright, I think I'm gonna kick off today with a case from Detroit, Michigan. The mystery of the disappearance of Phyllis Ann Flynn is one that lingers, casting a shadow over the years that have passed since that fateful night in May of 1988, which was before I was born. It's a puzzle that has defied resolution, leaving family and investigators grasping at straws in their quest for answers. After a birthday celebration at the Hotel Yorba in Detroit, Flynn vanished without a trace. The circumstances surrounding her disappearance are as mysterious as the hotel itself. She had requested that her father pick her up, a plea that would echo throughout the years as a haunting reminder of the unanswered questions. Now, the timeline of events is hauntingly sparse. A few days after her birthday, Flynn called home, signaling her desire to be retrieved from the Hotel Yorba. However, when her father arrived, she had evaporated into thin air, leaving behind an eerie void, and nobody has heard from her since. In the years that followed, the case went cold, a perplexing enigma with no breakthroughs. The detective assigned to Flynn's case retired, and the shadows seemed to close in on the scant leads. But even as the official investigation drew to a close, a glimmer of hope persisted among those determined to unravel the mystery. A family friend and a diligent Michigan State Police detective breathed some new life into the cold case back in 2014, so about a decade ago, reigniting the flame of inquiry. The Community United Effort Center for Missing Persons brought national attention to Flynn's disappearance, thrusting it into the spotlight of awareness-building efforts. The passage of time has not dimmed the resolve of those seeking closure. The Missing in Michigan campaign, led by Detective Sarah Krebs, has tirelessly worked to unearth fresh clues. The story of Phyllis Flynn found its place on billboards, a visual plea for information that could hopefully pierce through the fog of uncertainty. But to this day, the question remains: what happened at the Hotel Yorba? The void left by Flynn's disappearance resonates, a silent call for answers. The reward offered by Crime Stoppers of Michigan stands as an incentive, a monetary beacon beckoning anybody with information to step forward. But with the passage of 36 years, the harsh reality is lingering. Flynn's family, against the odds, clings to hope that she might still be alive. But sadly, the Hotel Yorba, once a backdrop to a birthday celebration, now stands as a silent witness to a disappearance that continues to baffle those who seek resolution. So I don't exactly have a name for this next hotel, outside of knowing that it's somewhere in the UK. I know, vague, but it was worth telling today. Imagine a place shrouded in whispers and veiled in the unknown. A hotel that, over the years, has become an unsettling enigma, a backdrop to a haunting mystery that eludes comprehension. It's not your typical story. It's a tale woven with threads of uncertainty and shadowed by the inexplicable disappearances of 66 young people. Nestled in the heart of the countryside, this hotel, with its weathered facade, stands as a testament to a history stained by the unexplained. The corridors echo with the distant laugh of young people who once roamed freely, their footsteps now silenced by a force that transcends the boundaries of our understanding. The first whispers of the mystery dates way back, like decades, a quiet murmur amongst locals who traded stories of curious occurrences. As time unfolded, so did the tales of the vanished youths, leaving a chilling imprint on the history of this seemingly ordinary establishment. Each disappearance, if we're going to compare it to something, maybe a jigsaw piece missing from a larger puzzle, paints a spectral image of uncertainty. The missing people, diverse in their backgrounds, ages, and stories, all converge at this point, their common thread being a vanishing act that perplexes even the most seasoned investigators. The authorities, puzzled and haunted by the lack of clues, have combed through the hotel's history, interviewed witnesses, scrutinized every nook and cranny, but they've got nothing. The answers remain elusive, like ghosts slipping through the fingers of those who seek them. The hotel itself, with its creaking floorboards and flickering lights, becomes a stage where the mundane collides with the mysterious. An invisible hand seems to orchestrate a malevolent symphony, leaving behind a disconcerting silence in the wake of each disappearance. The local community, once welcoming, now gazes upon the hotel with a mix of fear and curiosity. Whispers in the wind suggest that the place holds secrets, that it harbors an otherworldly energy, indifferent to the laws of our reality. As the count of those who have vanished climbed, the hotel's reputation transformed. It became more than bricks and mortar. It was just this living, breathing entity with a story. The rooms, once filled with the innocent laughter of youth, now resonate with an eerie stillness, a reminder of those who stepped into the shadows and never returned. Yeah, that's not somewhere I want to visit. No thank you, I'll leave the mysteries there. I don't need to unravel them. Now next up we have a legend that I believe to be true. Many years ago, an English woman and her daughter, at the conclusion of a tour in the Near East, arrived at a Paris hotel at the time of the exhibition. They were given separate rooms, one above the other. Trust me, I wouldn't want to be in the same room as my mother. After resting for a few hours, the daughter went to go see her mother, but the room was empty and completely altered. Like new wallpaper, new furniture, new everything. She was panicking. She called the maid and then the manager was like, you're under a delusion. When you arrived at this hotel, you were quite alone. But the girl was like, no, we signed our names in the visitor's book, mother and I. So they brought out the visitor's book, and above the daughter's name, what the mother had signed, was a signature of a stranger. Now, it wasn't until about a year later that the daughter learned that her mother had died suddenly of the plague, and that in order to save Paris from, crazy panic and the exhibition from absolute ruin, it was hurriedly agreed by the authorities that the death should be completely hushed up, and that the daughter should be made to believe, by the repeated denials of hotel servants, hotel managers, and cabmen, and the proofs of, the changed room and the altered visitor's book, that her unfortunate mother never reached the hotel. Imagine, you go to take a nap and you wake up and all of a sudden, okay, mom's gone, and you're Delulu. The girl allegedly found out the truth in a letter from a chambermaid. So when the story was originally told at a dinner at the house of Arthur Benson, Arthur Balfour, at the time, British Prime Minister, they were all hanging out, and Balfour was like, yeah, I'm gonna guess the ending. Now, a journalist for the Pall Mall Gazette, I think this was around 1913, talked to the author who originally published the tale, a Mr. Clement K. Shorter, noting by this time, of course, we've all heard the story. What's the truth to it? And Mr. Shorter's like, no, I believe it happened. It is a heck of a lot easier to believe that it happened than it was invented. And given an illness under precisely the same circumstances, the French police authorities are the only police authorities in the world who are equal to coping with it so brilliantly. I can't imagine waking up and being told, hey, you're completely wrong. No, thank you. Now for a tale that cursed me to my core, Liz, Sarah, and the Cosmos Resort. 2 years ago, a seemingly ordinary vacation turned into a nightmarish odyssey for a pair of friends, Liz and Sarah. The backdrop? A hotel that, despite its outward appearance of renovation and cheerfulness, concealed a darkness that would shake the very core of their existence. So the girls went in the lobby, they're like, okay, we're gonna go sign in. But there was this feeling of unease that was just sort of everywhere in the air. The check-in process was marked by odd glances and a peculiar conversation with the hotel staff. But they got upgraded. Woohoo! Room 347. This room with a view that won Sarah over. Seemed like, okay, things are getting better. Maybe my gut's just off. Maybe I need a nap. The first night was uneventful for Sarah, but for Liz, the shadows whispered secrets that kept her awake. Strange scratching noises emanated from behind the walls, which, yikes, that's not a soundtrack I want when I'm trying to sleep. And it only got worse as the days went on. A hidden door, concealed behind a nightstand, revealed a narrow, ominous space that reeked of rust and bleach. Yeah, that's terrifying. As Sarah delved deeper into the mystery, she discovered a network of tunnels, a dark labyrinth that extended beneath the hotel. The eerie passageways, laden with a stench of decay, hinted at a sinister purpose, one that became much more apparent as time went on. Liz's disappearance on the final night of their stay plunged Sarah into a desperate search for answers. The hotel staff's nonchalant response and the dismissive attitude of the police created an air of conspiracy. Sure, because the hidden door that led to under the hotel with the stench of decay wasn't enough. Determined to unravel the enigma, Sarah returned to the haunted hotel, guided by an invitation that seemed to taunt her, if you will. The nights after became a harrowing exploration of the hotel's hidden layers. The H sections, neglected and avoided, hinted at a malevolence that defied, my brain. The discovery of a bricked-up elevator shaft and the disturbing encounters in the narrow tunnels hinted at a malevolent force that lurked within the hotel's very foundation. So, fast forward, it's the final night, and in a desperate attempt to retrace Liz's steps, Sarah was led to an encounter with entities that, weren't of this world. Liz, or a distorted version of her, beckoned from the shadows. The nightmarish entities, with eyes that pierced the darkness, pursued Sarah through the dilapidated corridors, transforming the once grand ballroom into a grotesque spectacle. Now this whole mess reached its climax on the mysterious 7th floor. The revelation that Liz's encounter in the tunnel had birthed something malevolent. Something that wore her face, but harbored unspeakable horrors. Yeah, it painted a bit of a grim picture. The hotel's twisted reality, where time and space lost coherence, left poor Sarah grappling with a profound sense of dread. Now, this sad story concludes with Sarah's escape, but the psychological scars, they run deep. The fear of encountering those otherworldly entities, of witnessing the distorted face of Liz, that's gonna linger like a memory you don't want to have. The hotel, now a malevolent entity in its own right, kind of stands as a thin veil that separates our world from the other world, and not one you want to go near. Time to travel over to the heart of Santa Fe, and no, that isn't a cue for Newsies and Rent fans, so hush. Nestled within the walls of the La Posada Hotel lies a tale that, it's gonna give you some nightmares, folks. It's a narrative steeped in mystery, spectral apparitions, and unexplained phenomena. Cool, we got the whole trifecta. Room 256, once the abode of Julia Staub, echoes with the whispers of a bygone era, where the living and the dead seem to converge in a dance of the paranormal. Is it a ballet? So Chuck Barone, a vigilant security guard, recounted an eerie encounter that unfolded in this specific room of the hotel. In the company of a bellhop and a group of tourists, they approached said room, room 256, responding to a mysterious voice emanating from within. "I'm in here," it beckoned, yet upon investigation, the room was empty, with its windows locked from the inside, so there was no getting out of there. There was a phantom presence. Unseen, but you felt it. The paranormal enigma extended way beyond Chuck's story, by the way. His son John, a fellow guardian of the hotel secrets if you will, witnessed a ghostly face in the men's room mirror. It was a woman's face staring back at him, sending a shiver right down his spine, and this inexplicable encounter left him pale and shaken, which, yeah, that tracks. Ross Weisenhoff, once a skeptic, found himself entangled in the spectral tapestry of the hotel as well. Awakening in the middle of the night, he noticed a luminescent figure at the foot of his bed. This entity morphed into the ethereal form of a woman, fixating on him with an otherworldly gaze. Now this encounter shattered his skepticism, prompting a swift, "I'm getting out of here," as you do. The genesis of these ghostly manifestations lies in the tragic history of Julia, the lady of the mansion turned spectral hostess. She was once the vibrant center of Santa Fe's social tapestry, but fell into self-imposed exile after the loss of her 8th spawn. The Grand Mansion, a testament to love and opulence, transformed into the La Posada Hotel in 1936. Enter Christopher Chacon, a seeker of truth from the Organization of Scientific Investigation and Research. Alongside a team of experts, he delved into the paranormal intricacies of the hotel. Physical, psychological, and electrical examinations were conducted, leaving no stone unturned. 12 hours in isolation within the bedroom that's, doing all the bad things, monitoring the environment for any spectral stirrings. Infrared technology and night vision equipment were brought in, but despite the diligence, the source of the haunting remained elusive. Which, okay, we'll let you be. Ghosty ladies can do what you want. I would like to live.
Number 5 on this list is Atlantis Marine Park. We are headed all the way down under for this one because Atlantis Marine Park is actually in Australia. AustralianNews.com writes, Atlantis Marine Park was initially a huge success with families from WA and beyond flocking to the park to watch the live dolphin shows, swim in the pools, ride pedal boats, and have their obligatory photo with King Neptune, a huge statue at the entrance to the park. However, in 1990, just 9 years after opening, Atlantis shut its doors. Western Australia's boom never eventuated, and the 1987 stock market crash put a halt to prosperity. Atlantis closed due to financial difficulty and was left abandoned. It has since been damaged by vandals and has become overgrown and derelict. Old statues can still be found scattered throughout the grounds, as well as broken walls and concrete pools. For years, it was no man's land, popular with dog walkers. However, just last month, the iconic King Neptune was restored to its former glory after a petition by locals who started an online campaign for something to be done with the ruins. Well, I'm glad to see that Neptune is looking fresh again, but I don't know how long he'll stay that way. Apparently, this place, when the sun goes down, is home to some evil creatures. Four-legged mutant things with glowing red eyes that hiss and are nothing that we know of from this world. Now, this could be a bunch of baloney, but that's what some people have reported seeing when they've explored this place at night. Probably safe to go during the daytime, just make sure you set an alarm for 6 p.m. to get out of there if you do go. Number 4 on this list is Crinkly Bottom Theme Park. This one, to my understanding, has been demolished, but it still deserves a spot on this list because of how creepy it was when it was around. Mr. Blobby was a TV caricature in the early 1990s. He was featured on one of Britain's most successful late-night Saturday television shows and was this big pink blob creature with a bow tie on. This was a comedy television show, and this blob thing didn't lack any of that. He would often engage in annoying antics with celebrity guests and become a bit of a British television phenomenon. Well, Mr. Blobby was successful enough that he of course needed toys, merchandise, and heck, while we're at it, let's give him his own amusement park. Sometimes what works well on TV doesn't always translate to a fun amusement park though. Crinkly Bottom was what they called it, and it opened up in 1994. This annoying sidekick's popularity didn't last forever though, and this amusement park's life was very short-lived. The place shut down in 1996 because it simply was not making enough money. Then it faded away into obscurity and everybody forgot about this interesting little business venture. That was until 2009 though, when some urban explorers stumbled upon it again. The once bright and beautiful Blobby Land looked like something straight out of a horror film. It was worn and gross and just reeked of evil. Animals had taken up residence there, and based on how the place looked, it wouldn't have been surprising if some sketchy characters once did business there too. You can't visit it now because it's demolished, but you really shouldn't have been going when it was around anyways. Number 3 on this list is Boblo Island. I had to include Boblo Island on this list to give a bit of a shout out to Ontario, where your boy grew up. Boblo Island was wildly successful for a time and operated for nearly a century. As with a lot of places places on this list, though it couldn't seem to power through the 90s and had to shut down. Reader's Digest says, picture an 1898 Victorian amusement park, music from an organ grinder, women's skirts swishing around the dance hall, children's laughter echoing from various newfangled rides. That's what this theme park on Bois Blanc Island, nicknamed Boblo, near Detroit on the Canadian side of the Detroit River, was to residents alike. Its doors were shut nearly 100 years later in 1993, and the area is now closed to the public, but you can boat or kayak by the remains, listening for the ghostly sounds of long past visitors. While you can't stay here overnight, you can rent these 8 haunted places on Airbnb. Being on an island really adds to the creepiness for me, I think. Like this place, from all the pictures I could find, it really looks totally detached from all other society. Basically meaning that whatever happens here, you are totally by yourself. Like there is a new set of rules for this island. There have been stories that something lurks here, a spirit or something dark. Be very careful if you ever go to Boblo Island. Number 2 on this list is Pripyat Amusement Park. Pripyat is a town that we've talked a lot about on this channel already. In fact, it was recently featured in a video where we looked at the top 5 mysterious towns that are completely abandoned. Pripyat is a ghost town in northern Ukraine and near the Ukrainian and Belarus border. It was named after the nearby river Pripyat and was founded in 1970. Right in the town is a small amusement park that once looked quite fun and had plans to grow into a big Ukrainian park that people might flock to. Those dreams were never realized though, and now it sits in complete and utter disarray. Those dreams were never realized because of the horrible accident that occurred in 1986. You see, the town of Pripyat was basically established to serve the Chernobyl nuclear power plant. When it was first built, it was a closed town basically only for the workers of this place, but it grew and grew as time went on, and at its height had a population of just under 50,000 people. I don't need to go into too much detail about the accident as a whole, because I imagine that you guys are all pretty aware. But basically, this was the worst accident of this nature in human history, and for all our sakes, we need to hope that it never happens again. The radiation damage was absolutely massive, and right after it happened, the entire town of Pripyat had to be evacuated. That, of course, has left the amusement park, right in the middle of this town, completely abandoned as well. Not a lot of people have gone to this town or park since this incident occurred. For a long time, it wasn't safe to set foot within a set radius of the blast. Those who have been brave or foolish enough to set foot into this town and explore the amusement park have reported some strange and scary findings. Rumor has it that some sort of entity lives there. Something dark and evil calling this abandoned place home. A nasty and sinister entity that doesn't like to be disturbed. There have been talks of this being some type of shadow creature or potentially a beast, like a werewolf of sorts. Either way, the people who visit this place feel an overwhelming sense of dread when they're there. They also feel as if they're unwelcome, like they entered somebody's home who doesn't want them there. There are multiple reasons why this amusement park is abandoned, so I'd stay away if I was you. And finally, number 1 on this list is Six Flags. Now, I don't mean Six Flags as a chain or anything like that. There's 23 different Six Flags in the United States, and not all of them are haunted. One in particular, though, is currently out of commission, abandoned, and definitely a spot you shouldn't go to. All the Rooms writes, this Six Flags fell out of business following serious damage from Hurricane Katrina in 2005. The park opened in 2000 and was only operating for a few years before suffering significantly during the hurricane, which displaced 20,000 people and killed nearly 2,000 people. The park closed after Hurricane Katrina, and there wasn't enough funding for repairs, so it fell into further decay over the last few years. To this day, there's still an eerie sign at the entrance to the park that says closed for the storm. It's an apocalyptic site which has been taken advantage of by Hollywood and used for films such as Jurassic World and Dawn of Planet of the Apes. These filmmakers are way braver than I would be, because I would not want to be setting foot on those grounds. The people who have been here all seem to think that something paranormal is going on. Phantom noises echoing throughout the park and other random bodiless sounds are heard all the time. Similarly to a lot of the other things on this list, there is a massive overhanging feeling of dread. The air is thick with it, and you can almost taste the discomfort. No one has reported being attacked here, but it seems like that's only a matter of time if people keep going. The mayor of New Orleans is currently looking at demolishing this park, which, in my opinion, Probably for the best.
Number 5. Whittingham Hospital, England. Whittingham Hospital, located in England, is notorious for its spine-chilling reputation as one of the most haunted places within the United Kingdom. This branching psychiatric facility was originally founded in 1869 as the Whittingham Asylum. The hospital is riddled with a long and dark history that continues to intrigue the curious minds of paranormal enthusiasts, dark tourists, and even just casual onlookers. The hospital was meant to be a place of hope, where those suffering from mental illnesses could seek treatment and solace. But over the years, Whittingham Hospital's reputation took a dark turn. Substantiated claims of overcrowding, inadequate care, and the mistreatment of struggling patients began to surface, casting a dark shadow over the institution. As the hospital's population inflated, the claims and stories of its dark side only grew. One of the most haunting aspects of Whittingham Hospital comes from its now abandoned state. The facility officially closed its doors in 1995. The large complex consists of many interconnected buildings, all of which are said to be riddled with bouts of paranormal activity. It's not uncommon for curious visitors to report odd encounters, strange noises, and unexplained phenomena within the hospital's halls. One of the most famous ghostly entities said to roam the hospital is that of a nurse known as Nurse Edith. According to legend, Nurse Edith was deeply committed to her patients and worked tirelessly during her time at Whittingham. Some believe that her spirit lingers in the hospital, continuing to care for the patients who suffered there, even in their afterlives. Aw, that's kind of sweet. Visitors have reported hearing the sound of airy footsteps and the rustling of a nurse's uniform, even though the building is completely void of the living. Another ghost associated with Whittingham Hospital is the Lady in White, and guys, I'm starting to think that this Lady in White is actually just everywhere, because I swear to the heavens almighty that she has appeared in every single ghost video I've done. Is she like a ghost celebrity? Is she going on a world tour? Are people just really not creative and the only name they can think of is the lady and a vague descriptive feature? What would I be called? The lady with curls? Sorry, anyway. The Lady in White. This Lady in White is described as a spectral woman dressed in a flowing white gown. Well, I would assume so. She's often seen wandering the hospital's halls, her presence accompanied by an eerie chill and an overwhelming sense of dread. Some speculate that she may have been a former patient or a nurse from this hospital's dark past. What nurse was going to work in a long, flowy dress? The hospital's small chapel is another location that is thought to be haunted. It's always the chapel, isn't it? Witnesses have reported hearing faint whispers, disembodied voices, and the sound of organ music emanating from the chapel, even though it hasn't been used for decades. Well, not by the living at least. The atmosphere in this abandoned place is incredibly uncomfortable and haunting. It's not surprising in the slightest that many believe the spirits of the past still linger within its walls. Number 4. Essex County Hospital. Essex County Hospital is a medical facility in the heart of Essex County, but it has definitely gained popularity for more than just its dark medical practices. This now abandoned hospital has become the subject of numerous ghost stories and paranormal legends, earning it a reputation as one of the most haunted asylums in the region. The hospital's strange history began in the late 1800s when it was first founded as a state-of-the-art mental health institution. Over the years, it grew to care for a wide range of patients, from the mentally ill to those with severe physical medical conditions. However, it is the alleged treatment of the mentally ill patients that left a sinister imprint on this building's hallowed halls. Many claims of paranormal sightings in Essex County Hospital revolve around the abandoned psychiatric wards. Former staff members and visitors claim to hear disembodied voices, eerie whispers, and the sounds of footsteps echoing boldly through the empty hallways. Some witnesses have even reported shadowy figures moving about, only to vanish into thin air when approached. These strange entities are thought to be tormented souls, leading some to believe that the hospital's troubled history has left broken, lingering spirits behind. One of the most chilling stories surrounds a former nurse who is said to still roam the hospital's near-empty corridors. It's said that she was driven to madness by the relentless demands of her job and eventually took her own life during one of her regular shifts. Visitors and paranormal investigators have even reported encountering her ghostly figure, dressed in an old nurse's uniform, wandering aimlessly and emitting an energy plagued by sorrow. The morgue of the hospital is another area where paranormal activity is frequently reported. Witnesses have claimed to hear strange, unexplained noises and have also felt sudden drops in temperatures. Some have even reported seeing figures of patients who passed away within the hospital's walls wandering around. Essex County Hospital's notoriety has attracted paranormal investigators from everywhere. Many have conducted extensive research within the building, managing to capture unexplained phenomena on audio and video recordings. Legends legends and ghost stories have only intensified the hospital's supernatural reputation. Residents avoid the area at night, and honestly, props to them, they're smart. Don't walk near the creepy abandoned hospital filled with scorned creatures alone at night. Night is when the bad things happen. Night is when there is definitely something chasing you as you run up the stairs after turning off the light. Skeptics often scoff at the claims of ghostly encounters, but the giant volume of reported paranormal activity can't be ignored. Whether you're a plain-minded skeptic or a curious believer in the supernatural, the stories surrounding this abandoned hospital continue to intrigue anyone who hears its unsettling story. Number 3. Danver State Hospital. Danver State Hospital, located in Danvers, Massachusetts, has a twisted and haunted history that has managed to capture the imaginations of paranormal enthusiasts and the curiosity of brave urban explorers. It's considered one of the most well-known and haunted asylums within the United States. Danvers State Hospital was constructed in 1874 and was originally known as the State Lunatic Hospital at Danvers. It was designed by an architect as a sprawling Kirkbride plan institution. This design was highly preferred in the 19th century due to its focus on natural light and, more importantly, patient comfort. However, over time, the hospital faced issues relating to overcrowding, underfunding, and development surrounding the knowledge and treatment of psychiatric care. Danvers State Hospital became notorious for its mistreatment of patients, overcrowding, and unsanitary conditions. Stories of neglect, harm inflicted by staff, and experimental treatments added to its disturbing reputation. The hospital's history is drowned in tragedy. Thousands of patients passed away within its walls over the years. The hospital's architecture, which features a central administration building with wings extending outward, became an iconic silhouette on the Massachusetts landscape. The hospital's ominous appearance also played a role in its association with paranormal activity. By the mid-1900s, changes in the mental health care and treatment thankfully led to the eventual abolishment of Danvers State Hospital. It officially closed its doors in 1992, causing the property to face years of abandonment and nature-claim deterioration. Danvers State Hospital's association with the paranormal began to increase dramatically during its years of abandonment. Urban explorers and ghost hunters reported strange interactions and occurrences, including unexplained noises, odd figures, and a general feeling of unease. The hospital's decaying interiors and labyrinth-like layout only further contributed to the sense of doom. In 2005, the administration building was renovated and repurposed into luxury apartments known as the residences at the Page School. However, the other wings of the hospital were demolished to make way for new things. The history and haunting even inspired a 2001 horror film called Session 9, which was set and actually partially filmed on the real hospital ground. Despite the changes to the property and the demolition of much of the hospital, Danvers State Hospital remains a symbol of the troubling history of mental health care in the US. Number 2. Old Changi Hospital, Singapore. The Old Changi Hospital, located in Singapore, is a haunting relic of the past, notorious for its eerie and unsettling history, like many others here. This abandoned medical facility with its dark past and countless paranormal encounters has become the focus of local legends and a location of paranormal fascination. The hospital was built in the early 1930s and was initially used as a military hospital for British forces. During World War II, it witnessed significant trauma and suffering while it was used as a prisoner of war camp by the Japanese. The hospital's history is tainted by atrocities committed during the Japanese occupation. Many prisoners of war, including Allied soldiers and civilians, suffered unspeakable horrors within its thick walls. Claims of torment, brutality, and death all contribute to the building's dark and unsettling presence. After the war, the Old Changi Hospital continued to serve as a medical facility, but its patients began to experience strange displays of paranormal activity. The stories of the paranormal activity soon began to spread throughout the hospital. Visitors and staff often reported hearing strange noises, disembodied voices, and witnessing oddities from another dimension. Commonly reported encounters include sightings of shadowy figures, the sounds of footsteps in empty corridors, and mysterious, unexplained events. One of the most well-known stories associated with the hospital is the Lady in Red. According to the legend, a woman dressed in red is often spotted aimlessly roaming through the hospital's hallways. Some believe that she may be the spirit of a nurse from the hospital's past, forever trapped within its walls. Paranormal investigators and enthusiasts have flocked to the Old Changi Hospital to explore its haunted reputation even further, hoping that they may be fortunate enough to catch even just a glimpse of an unknown entity. Many have managed to capture audio recordings, photographs, and video footage supposedly documenting encounters with spirits or unexplained phenomena. These investigators have even further fueled the already blazing fire of this building's haunted reputation. In recent years, the Old Changi Hospital has been featured in various paranormal television shows. The Old Changi Hospital's chilling history and reported encounters with the unexplained make it an enduring and eerie landmark in Singapore. Number 1. Pennhurst State School and Hospital. Pennhurst State School and Hospital, found in Spring City, Pennsylvania, has a sinister history full of allegations surrounding the serious neglect and harmful mistreatment of its residents. This tragic past has given rise to numerous claims of paranormal activity, turning Pennhurst into a hotspot for ghost lovers, paranormal investigators, and curious minds. Pennhurst was established in 1908, initially intended to be an institution for the care and treatment of individuals with neurodivergent brains and serious mental health impairments. Because anyone who was neurodivergent back then was classified as legally insane. However, over the decades, like many others on this list, the facility became overcrowded, understaffed, and plagued by claims of inhumane treatment towards its patients. Reports of physical and psychological harm, as well as overcrowded and unsanitary conditions, created a lot of controversy and upset in the community. Not enough for them to do anything about it, but in their heads, they were very upset. The mistreatment and neglect of residents at Pennhurst eventually led to its closure in 1987, after over 80 years after the doors first opened. The facility was abandoned and left to be forgotten and taken over by nature, but the stories of the cruel suffering endured by its residents did not fade. Instead, these stories contributed to the now well-known reputation that Pennhurst has. One of the most known paranormal activity hotspots within Pennhurst is the Mayflower Building. This building was once home to some of the institution's most vulnerable residents, who all met grisly, vicious ends. Visitors exploring the abandoned wing have reported hearing looming voices, footsteps, and the sounds of wheelchairs moving on their own. Many believe that the tormented, vengeful spirits of former residents continue to roam the Mayflower Building, unable to find true peace even in death. The Pennhurst State School and Hospital is host to regular ghost tours and paranormal investigations, attracting curious individuals from all over the globe. These tours offer enthusiasts a chance to explore the decaying buildings and the chance to potentially encounter one of the restless spirits that inhabit the grounds. While skeptics argue that the stories of paranormal activity at Pennhurst can be attributed to the tragic history of the institution and the power of suggestion, many who have visited the site claim to have had inexplicable and chilling experiences.
Number 5 on this list is the Hay Adams Hotel. This hotel is located in Washington, D.C. and has quite the history to it. USA Today writes, quite possibly the most famous hotel in the capital, the Hay Adams has hosted many a politician, including the Obamas before inauguration. In 1884, best friends John Hay, Abraham Lincoln's private secretary and later a Secretary of State, and Henry Adams, the author and descendant of John Quincy, built their homes on the plot of land where the hotel now sits. In 1927, 9 years after Adams' death, the houses were razed and replaced by the hotel that stands today. Adams' wife, Marion Hooper Adams, killed herself on the site in 1885, and her spirit reportedly haunts the hotel. Guests and staff say they can hear a woman crying softly, disembodied voices, and doors opening and closing on their own. What is it about hotels and people taking their own lives? It feels like so many hotels are haunted because someone left the world far too early, and usually it was their decision to do so. Marion Hooper Adams is no exception, and she has made this hotel a very inhospitable place to stay. Sometimes you hear the faint cries of a creature or spirit and they go away, but apparently her spirit absolutely wails. All the time there are screams and crying heard. In fact, it's so repetitive that it gets less scary and more of an annoyance than anything else. People literally just can't sleep at night because they're constantly listening to her crying over how her life ended. It's also a nuisance when they find things missing all the time. Marion likes to move things and steal items. Oftentimes, the valuables of these people are gone if they leave the hotel for an extended period of time and then come back. Now, maybe this part of the legend is actually just one of the hotel workers stealing stuff and blaming it on her, but either way, things will go missing if you stay here. It's overall just a horrible experience being at this hotel for an extended period of time, and I wouldn't recommend it to anyone. Number 4 on this list is Hotel Provincial. Located in New Orleans, this hotel is teeming with paranormal energy. USA Today says the 2-story Hotel Provincial with 94 rooms in the historic French Quarter is a retreat into old New Orleans. Like many New Orleans properties, it also claims to be a popular paranormal activity hub. Like other area hotels, the property acted as a medical facility for wounded Confederate soldiers and is said to still possess their spirits. From distressed soldiers and operating doctors to pools of blood but guests have reported it all. If actually staying at the property seems too spooky, it's also a stop on many walking ghost tours of the city as well. Pools of blood, guys. Literal pools of blood. Just imagine walking into your hotel room after a long day of doing stuff, getting in your PJs, moving the comforter over to your bed to slip in, and then seeing a bunch of blood just ooze out. This has actually happened to people before. That would absolutely scar me for life if something like that ever went down. Not to mention people actually getting physically scarred when they come here. People have reported getting attacked by unknown paranormal entities while staying here, waking up to a spirit completely ravaging them and having no idea how or why it's happening. This is not the type of hotel that you want to stay at, and you will literally risk your safety if you do. Number 3 on this list is the Fiserv Hotel. This one has been around for a while and has got a lot of people scared who've stayed here. Travel and Leisure says the historic Fiserv Hotel opened in Milwaukee in 1893 with elegant interiors and advanced technology for the times, including electricity, individual thermostat controls, and fireproofing, making it one of the most sought-after accommodations in the city. The hotel is supposedly home to a number of spooky sightings. In fact, several MLB players have reported their own personal ghost experiences in the hotel, and some are even too scared to stay there again. So guys, I actually run a podcast all about the MLB. Because I run this podcast, I'm pretty knowledgeable about the MLB. I have literally heard of this hotel before even doing research on this video. Players will flat out refuse to play here now because they get way too scared and can't get any sleep when they're there. Then obviously when they play their game the next day, they suck because they just spent the entire night basically fending for their lives in this haunted hotel. It's really too bad that it has to be this way because this is apparently one of the nicer hotels in Milwaukee. It's definitely one of the oldest, and back then it was the best place to stay if you wanted a luxurious night. Hopefully the ghosts that reside here eventually leave and we can all enjoy it once again without getting completely haunted. Number 2 on this list is the Emily Morgan Hotel. The Emily Morgan Hotel is located in Texas and is probably the most haunted in that entire state. It wasn't always the lovely and renovated hotel that it is today. Prior to this being a beautiful place to stay, this was actually a hospital and a place for doctors to stay. Obviously, during that period, it saw a lot of illness and death, and that has tainted the space. But believe it or not though, this isn't the only set of tragedies that this location has seen. Before it was a hospital, before it was anything at all, on this very site where the hotel currently sits, was the Battle of the Alamo. The Battle of the Alamo was one of the most critical battles in the Texas Revolution. The battle lasted for 13 brutal days in 1836. It was between the Mexican soldiers and the Texan soldiers. The Mexican soldiers won out and killed every single one of the Texan soldiers who were there defending their fort. This battle is one of the most famous in American history for how horrible and brutal it was. It's no wonder that the land here is haunted and will infect basically anything that's built here. It also doesn't help when the hotel used to be a hospital which saw its fair share of horrible things too. Nowadays, this hotel has a whole cast of paranormal characters. Soldiers from back in the day have been spotted roaming around the halls, and patients and doctors as well. There have even been a few occasions where people have reported having visions of being on the battlefield as if they were transported there. Definitely not the spot to be staying on your vacay to Texas. And finally, number 1 on this list is La Fonda on the Plaza. This is a hotel located in New Mexico that has been host to plenty of tragedies. Travel and Leisure says this beautiful Santa Fe, New Mexico hotel has an incredibly rich history. Since 1609, a number of inns have been located on this very site, but a handful of events may be the cause of continued hauntings. According to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, the ghosts of a judge shot in the lobby, a businessman who gambled everything away at the hotel before jumping down a well, and a bride killed on her wedding night are just a few of the spirits that you may come across during your stay here. That's 3 spirits too many for me, guys. Whenever situations like this arise, I start to question things. What I mean is that, isn't this a little bit odd that 3 totally separate, completely different tragic events all took place right here at different times? Sure, it could be a coincidence, but it seems like a rather sad one if you ask me. Maybe there was always something about this space that was just a little off. Maybe people who come here just get hit with horrible luck. Maybe this hotel was built on some sort of ancient ground that it shouldn't have been built on, and this is the horrible reaction. I obviously can't say for sure, but something's fishy about this hotel, and I wouldn't recommend checking it out if I was you.
In at number 5, we have the King Opera House. The King Opera House in Van Buren was built in the late 19th century, but didn't get famous from the shows it hosted or its beautiful interior, but instead the Opera House is noted for its connection to a murder, and there are rumors that it is haunted by the murdered actor. It all began with actor Charles Tolson, who was the owner of the Tolson Stock Company, which was a traveling acting troupe. The troupe had just finished a week of performances at the King Opera House in September 1903, and they were headed out of town to go to another performance. They headed to the train station, and when Tolson made his way to the ticket window, someone called out his name. Dr. William Parman, a well-known local doctor, emerged and shot Tolson with his revolver. Tolson was shot in the hip and the chest, and he was taken to the Fort Smith Hospital, but it was too late, and he died from his injuries. Dr. Parchman's motive for the incident was that he believed his 17-year-old daughter was in love with Tolson, was planning on running away with him, even though Tolson was married and his wife was a member of the acting troupe. Tolson knew Dr. Parchman and his daughter Allie, but there was no proof that he had any intention of eloping with the girl. Parchman was acting based on the information given to him by a vinegar salesman who may have had an interest in the young girl. Parchman was found not guilty of the murder despite there being multiple witnesses. Interestingly, both Allie and the vinegar salesman left town and were not present for the trial. It's said that Tolson's ghost haunts the King Opera House, which was the location of his last performance. Today, the Opera House is a contributing property to the Van Buren Historic District, listed on the National Register of Historic Places. It isn't currently open to the public, but is available to be rented out. In at number 4, we have Toltec Mounds. The Toltec Mounds is a famous historical site in Arkansas and is a National Historic Landmark, one of 4 in the Arkansas State Park system, and this park is the largest and most complex mound site in the state. Arkansas was once the home of a group of people referred to as the Plum Bayou culture by archaeologists and historians. Their existence in the area is a bit of a mystery. These people were not related to the Toltec tribes from Mexico, despite the site's name. The Plum Bayou culture also cannot be traced to any other group of people living in the area when the tribe was active. A total of 18 mounds have been identified in the area, all built between 650 and 1050 AD. One mound stands 49 feet high and another at 39 feet, with many smaller mounds surrounding it. The site was abandoned around 1050 AD and no remnants of the residents exist outside of the Toltec Mounds. Today, the site is still an active archaeological site in the home of Toltec Mounds Archaeological State Park. As for hauntings at the site, if an entire culture disappearing without a trace isn't creepy enough, many visitors to the site have reported the appearance of lights or orbs near the mounds, seeing ghosts and hearing footsteps around the site at night. Many of these findings have been caught on camera and video, and so many paranormal investigators, ghost hunters, and haunting enthusiasts have confirmed there is activity in the area. Whether it's from the Lost Society or not, we may never know. The mounds are open daily for visitors, with tours available to learn more about the history and hauntings in the area. In at number 3, we have the Allen House. The Allen House was built back in 1905 and was named after the original owner, Joe Lee Allen, where he lived in the home with his family for many years. Although Joe died in 1917, his wife Caddy stayed in the home with the 3 children Laddle, Lonnie, Lee, and Lewis. Sadly, Laddle took his own life in one of the bedrooms by drinking potassium cyanide, and it was unknown for many years for why she did it. After her death, her mother Caddy Allen kept the room completely closed off from the rest of the house. When Caddy passed in 1954, the property was split into rental apartments, and soon after renters moved in, they reported hearing footsteps and moans from the bedroom where Laddle died. In 1985, new owners bought the house and opened the bedroom, and it still contained the bottle of cyanide in a closet. The house changed owners twice, and in 2007, Mark and Rebecca Spencer purchased the Allen House and had a complete paranormal investigation done in 2008 because of the endless unexplainable instances. The investigators recorded over 40 voice phenomena and had their own paranormal experiences throughout their investigation. On August 22, 2009, Laddle's love letters were discovered in the attic floor. Over 90 letters detail her 1948 love affair, which ended with her taking her own life on Christmas night. After the owner Mark had experienced endless amounts of paranormal activity and discovering Laddle's love letters, he wrote a book called A Haunted Love Story. Nowadays, the home can be booked for tours explaining the history and the paranormal activity that goes on in the Allen House. During the Halloween season, it's open to the public from 6 to 11 p.m. for tours, and paranormal investigators and ghost lovers flock to hopefully experience Laddle's ghost that haunts the house to this day. In at number 2, we have Clayton House. The Clayton House is a historical treasure, but it's also one of the most haunted places in Arkansas. The home was originally built in 1852 by a man known as Mr. Sutton, and several years later, William Henry Harrison Clayton purchased the house and renovated it, doubling it in size, transforming the style into Victorian Victorian Gothic Italianate. Mr. Clayton lived here from 1882 to 1897 with his wife along with their 7 children. The home still has old portraits of William and his wife Florence hanging on the wall and still had numerous priceless family belongings in the home. William had a twin brother, John K. Clayton, who was a US senator who had been mysteriously assassinated in 1873, and many believe his ghost is one that haunts the Clayton House. The second floor bedroom seems to have the most activity, and staff and visitors have reported hearing footsteps, boots stomping, and doors slamming, along with seeing apparitions. Music and singing have also been heard throughout the house. People who have visited this home have described seeing one ghostly apparition known as the Tall Man, who is dressed in all black, wears a hat, and walks angrily around. Another spirit often seen around the Clayton property is described as the woman in the brown dress. The woman is said to be peaceful and often just stands in one spot quite still. She is believed to be either Mrs. Clayton or possibly a nurse from the time the property was a hospital. The home became abandoned during the Civil War before it transformed into a Union Army hospital. There was a carpenter in 2007 who was doing some repairs on the home and took pictures before it started working, and when the pictures were developed, there was what appeared to be a woman in one of them. The home is now listed on the National Registry of Historic Places and holds tours of the home explaining the history and ghost stories. And finally, and at number 1, we have Cresant Hotel. The Cresant Hotel was built in 1886 and can be found in Eureka Springs. Due to the rich history, it has hundreds of tales of paranormal experiences and ghost sightings. The hotel has previously served as both a private girls' college and a cancer hospital, where Dr. Norman Baker claimed to have the cure for cancer. There are so many stories of ghost sightings, starting in room 218 where Michael, an Irish stonemason, who fell to his death when building the hotel. He's known to hang out in this room and is often seen. Theodora, a cancer patient who is known to be seen fumbling for her keys outside room 419, as well as tidying up for guests when they leave the room. Brecky, who passed away in the hotel, has been seen throughout the hotel, often bouncing a ball. Dr. John Fremont Ellis, the hotel's former in-house doctor in the 19th century, is often seen, or his cherry pipe tobacco is smelled near his former office, which is now room 212. Even the famed hotel cat Morris, who had been buried on the hotel property, is regularly seen and heard. A recurring phenomenon happens at a specific spot on the 3rd floor, where the hotel connects to an annex built onto the hotel when it was a hospital. The area has been said to be a portal to the other side. There have been multiple guests who have grown faint, with a few passing out frequently. Guests turning pale and falling against the wall and then sliding down. Many paranormal investigators believe that limestone has a special ability to absorb and release electromagnetic and psychic energies. Cresant Mount in the hilltop the hotel sits on is predominantly limestone. The massive thick stones used for the body of the hotel were also made of limestone, and these factors may contribute to the amount of paranormal activity the hotel guests experience. The Cresant Hotel is dubbed America's Most Haunted Hotel and has been on many TV shows like Ghost Hunters, Ghost Adventures, and Paranormal Witness. There have been an abundance of extraordinary experiences and have attracted the attention of paranormal investigators to study and research the hotel's supernatural activity. The hotel offers daily ghost tours to learn more about the ghost stories, sightings, and the history of the hotel.
Number 5 on this list is the Molly Brown House. If you live in Denver, then there is no way that you aren't familiar with this haunted place. Thrillist says you've no doubt heard of the Molly Brown House and likely passed it on the street once or twice too. Molly Brown was a notable member of Denver's elite and perhaps known best for being a Titanic survivor, and despite allegedly living a relatively happy life, visitors to the museum and staff have reported quite a bit of strange happenings. Some have smelled what's believed to be husband J.J. Brown's pipe, or have witnessed lights off and on the fritz, and staff have reported furniture being seemingly rearranged. Sometimes figures can even be seen roaming the house. A visit is worth it alone for the history, but the potential for getting a bit spooked or walking into a cold spot is definitely an added bonus. We once again have one of those locations where no one has any idea why it's haunted, it just is. Maybe it's the connection to the Titanic that has got this place acting funky. Obviously, that was a very unnatural occurrence and took the lives of tons of people in a very sad way. So I could believe that the Titanic and the survivor of the Titanic plays some role into why this place is haunted the way that it is. Good news is that this isn't the worst haunting that you can run into. Like, yes, you will get a little scared for sure. You might smell something funny, or have a ghost pull something on you, or even maybe have small valuables go missing. But ultimately, you probably shouldn't be dragged to the underworld here by some shadow demon or anything like that. So I guess if you were to visit any place on this list, then this one wouldn't be the worst. Just be prepared for what's coming, because if you aren't, then it could leave you with some serious mental trauma. Number 4 on this list is Phantom Canyon Road. You need to be very careful on this road because there is a good chance you could suffer a serious crash if you aren't. Thrillist says a haunted road is one thing, but a haunted road in Colorado means you're likely on the edge of a mountain and at some serious elevation. Phantom Canyon Road is a detour off the Gold Belt Tour byway connecting Cripple Creek and Florence and was originally the railroad for that route. As you drive along, you can clearly see the ghost towns of Wilbur, Adelaide, and Glenbrook, and legend has it that the reason for Phantom Canyon's name is credited to sightings of a man wearing a prison uniform walking along the tracks in the 1890s. The man supposedly had been executed at the Colorado State Penitentiary a few days earlier. So yeah guys, you better have your wits about you, because if you don't, this ghost might come out and startle the crap out of you, and then the next thing you know, you're gonna be face deep into a tree somewhere. It also just adds to the horror ambiance that you're driving past several ghost towns along the way. Like, of course, they just had to be on the side of the road as you're also getting stalked by this ghost prisoner. No one really knows what this prisoner wants with you, but let's face it, I can't imagine it's good. My dude was executed back in the day, so for one, what he did was probably pretty bad to warrant a punishment like that, and then secondly, he literally got executed, and I can only guess that his ghost probably isn't too pleased about that. Y'all need to be especially careful if you're driving down this road, because at any point, this guy could pop out. Number 3 on this list is Central City Masonic Cemetery. Of course, we had to have a cemetery on this list. No haunted place list would be complete without at least one of them. Thrillist says, founded as a mining town in the late 1800s, Central City is now known as a destination for those looking to head to the hills for a gambling fix in the casinos that now dot the area. But one thing hasn't changed. The woman in black who twice a year appears in this hilltop cemetery above the town. Known as the Columbine Lady, she comes to visit the grave of John Cameron, a prominent former resident of Central City who died in 1884. Some believe she is his fiancée, appearing to leave flowers for her lost love on November 1st, the anniversary of Cameron's death, and April 5th, a date for which the significance remains a mystery, much like the woman herself. This place is safe to go to if, of course, you do not go during these times. She's been coming for a long time, and anyone who tried to interfere with her has had to pay the price. Now, people kind of suspect that she was in a relationship with John Cameron, but there's also another theory. Many people think that John actually wronged her in his life, and that this woman in black comes twice a year to double check that John is still dead and hasn't come back to life by some means. Pretty scary tale for sure, one that you probably don't want to get involved with. Number 2 on this list is the Broadmoor. Located in Colorado Springs, this hotel would be freaking awesome if it wasn't so haunted. Thrillist says this sprawling 5-star hotel has a lot to offer for anyone seeking a relaxing and indulgent getaway. But along with the golf course, spa, and nearby zoo, there's one feature you won't find in any brochure. Staff and guests alike have reported the presence of a woman, often in the penthouse where Julia Penrose, co-founder of the property, once lived. While not confirmed, Penrose's death is said to have been surrounded by a strange occurrence in which she went missing and was later found, confused and shaking in the woods nearby with no memory of how she got there. She passed away a week later, and perhaps her spirit remains, watching over the property and seeking answers about her own mysterious death. Now I am wondering, man, how did Penrose die? Like, this whole story feels like a movie or something like that. I truly think somebody needs to get in here and investigate what the heck happened here. Because, like, should we be scared of the region because this is gonna happen again? Was Julia doing something specific before she disappeared, and should we avoid doing that thing? There are just so many questions that need to be answered here, and sadly I can't do it from the comfort of Toronto. That being said, I'm also not trying to end up like Julia, and therefore will be leaving this job to somebody far more qualified. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Highlands Ranch Mansion. A truly picturesque mansion, one that's been standing for over 100 years, and one that's home to a ghostly spirit. Thrillist says this sprawling stone mansion, built in 1891 is often rented for weddings and events due to its impressive structural beauty and picturesque prairie views. But it's also a historic property and somewhat of a museum of the times with a bit of paranormal activity sprinkled in. The ghost of Julia Kistler, daughter of F. Kistler, who bought the property in 1926, is said to haunt the home, with visitors and staff alike reporting hearing a woman's sobs, seeing a silhouette figure moving about when the mansion was otherwise vacant, and lights sporadically turning on and off. I don't know about you guys, but during my wedding ceremony, I want to hear beautiful sounding music, not the sobs of some ghost woman thing. Apparently she's crying all the time, and this woman's emotions are not something to play with. There's a story where once several children were playing around here. There was a wedding ceremony scheduled here for later that day, and the children were off doing what kids do before the proceedings got underway. They ran into this ghost crying, and then they started to make fun of her. They were rude and definitely unkind, but they also didn't deserve what she did next. It's said that in a fit of rage, she flew inside their bodies and possessed each and every one of them for a short time, showing them things that were truly terrifying. Things that have ultimately changed those boys' lives and altered their mentality forever. Any ghost that's capable of doing something like that, that's one that I don't want to be around.
In at number 5 we have Eldridge Hotel. The Eldridge Hotel is a historic building located in downtown Lawrence, Kansas. The building is named after Sheila Eldridge, who was a prominent anti-slavery individual who lived here in the 1800s. The building became an apartment complex in the 1970s, but there was a strong desire by the city to see it open as a hotel, and a group of investors contributed, as well as the city of Lawrence, into industrial revenue bonds to make this dream a reality. In the later 1980s it opened as a hotel. A popular story has circulated about the hauntings in this hotel, with the locals, employees and guests, that the ghost is that of Sheila Eldridge, who haunts the halls to this day. Many claim that because the Eldridge house's original cornerstone is located in room 506, and his spirit will manifest in that room and also roam around the building. People who have stayed in this room have claimed to witness breath marks on recently cleaned mirrors, doors opening and shutting on their own, and lights turning on and off by themselves. Others claim that the hotel's elevator is also haunted by a different spirit, who is known to open and shut the elevator doors on the 5th floor. The 5th floor is said to contain a portal to the spirit world. A popular photograph was taken during the 1980s that clearly shows a ghost-like figure in the building's elevator. Many other photographers have mentioned having unexplained technical difficulties with their cameras when near the elevator. The story of the hotel and the hauntings of Eldridge was the inspiration for the movie The Demon's Shadow, and the hotel was featured in the series My Ghost Story and has been depicted in many writings. Many believe the rich history has resulted in the amount of paranormal activity. In at number 4, Midland Railroad Hotel. The Midland Railroad Hotel is known for serving the largest steak around, and if you can finish all of it, you get it for free. But it has a sinister, haunting history. It was first a popular train stop in the 1890s, then known for being the location for the movie Paper Moon, where many scenes were filmed at this hotel in 1973. Since then, it's gone through fires, the Great Depression, and plenty of renovations. It is now owned by the Wilson Foundation, has been back in business since 2003, and is listed on the National Register of Historic Places. Not only is this hotel known for these interesting things, it's most known now for the paranormal activity that lurks around the hotel. The most famous ghost is that of an orphan girl that haunts the 3rd floor, who knocks on doors, runs through the hallways, and even jumps on your bed, leaving little footprints. A ghost hunting team has experienced this spirit and have recorded sounds of the little girl. Another 3rd floor room is where a sheriff was said to have been lynched, and sometimes the door is unable to be unlocked even by the master key. Ghostly figures have been seen at the top of the stairs, and things in the kitchen have flown distances suddenly without being touched by anyone. There are also many ghostly figures that are seen on the staircases, and have left many to believe that the fire that took many lives back in 1902 are the results of some of these paranormal presences. The owner of the Midland Railroad Hotel, Melinda Merrill, says that there's not one employee who hasn't seen or felt something, and you can definitely feel a presence when you enter the hotel. In at number 3 we have Hotel Josephine. The Hotel Josephine is considered by many to be the most haunted hotel in Kansas. It was built in 1890, located in the city of Holton, and is the oldest consecutive operating hotel west of the Mississippi River. The history of the hotel is rich but also very haunted. The hotel was built by A.D. Walker and was named after his daughter Josephine. When it was built, she was only 4 months old and she attended the local elementary school and graduated Kansas University. Her graduation photo is hung in the front parlor, above the antique piano, and according to the current hotel manager, Tracer Fox, her spirit is just one that is wandering the hotel. Tracer Fox has expressed his belief in the spirits when he first stayed at the hotel. He was woken up suddenly at 3:30 a.m. and his bed was moving. He figured there was an earthquake, but when nothing in the news confirmed it, he knew it was a spirit. His mother came and stayed in a room across from him and experienced the exact same thing he did with no explanation for it. They had been skeptics before these happenings, but they are both now firm believers. Other guests staying at the hotel have similar stories, as well as experiencing hearing strange sounds, laughter, footsteps, and seeing shadows. It has been expressed that spirits can be found on each floor. One of the most haunted rooms in the hotel is the Buffalo Room, where shadows are often seen and photographed in the mirrors around the room, as well as the Carrie Nation Room. According to historical documents, a woman hanged herself in the bathroom of that room, and many guests staying there have come out of the room clutching their necks and having a hard time breathing. The hotel has brought several famous guests over the years, including former US President Grover Cleveland, who stayed there in between his 2 terms as president, along with Carrie Nation, Robert Louis Stevenson, Charles Curtis, Kirstie Alley, John Sullivan, Sam Rayburn, and Harry Langdon. Due to the amount of paranormal activity and active spirits in this hotel, the hotel hosts several paranormal and haunted events throughout the year, and many ghost hunters come to Holton to check out the more than century-old hotel. It's also been featured in many television shows, including Ghost Tours of Kansas and Haunted Rooms America. Coming in at number 2 we have Mcer Villa. The Mcer Villa is one of the unusual and historic houses built in the city of Atchison. It was built in 1889 for John McIntyre, a wealthy manufacturer of harnesses and saddles. He did a great deal of business with wagon trains plying the overland trails. John McIntyre's first wife, Alice, died in 1892. He married his second wife, Anna Conlon, a widow with 3 sons, and after John's death in 1902, Anna continued living in the home until her death in 1916. During her ownership, the house was home to many of her relatives, with lots of children as well. Around 1925, Anna's brother, Judge Charles J. Conlon, a prominent Atchison lawyer, and his family made the villa their home. In 1952, the Mcer Villa was purchased by Miss Isabel Altus, a retired professional violinist and eccentric. She lacked the financial resources to be able to restore the home, and shortly before her death, she sold the home to George Gerardi in 1969, who started to rehabilitate the old estate. Many people, past and present, who have lived in and visited the home have experienced many paranormal experiences. There have been figures being seen in windows when no one is home, lights turning on and off in the tower which doesn't have electricity, a speaker getting thrown off the counter, and boxes mysteriously moving on their own. Sounds of slamming doors throughout the night, footsteps walking down the hallway on the second floor throughout the night, the feeling of being watched, drastic temperature changes, voices, the scent of a woman's perfume, and the hunt of cigarettes. The number of encounters and confirmed hauntings seen and heard around this home is crazy, and it's considered to be one of the most active paranormal homes in all of the US. The amount of activity in this home makes it a hub for investigators, mediums, psychics, and ghost hunters. They offer ghost tours of the home, and you can stay overnight to try and encounter these spirits. And finally, in at number 1 we have Sallie House. The Sallie House is said to be the most haunted place in Kansas. This home was built in the turn of the century and is located in the city of Atchison. After being built, the home was bought by the Atchison physician who worked from his home. The front served as an office space and examination rooms, and the upstairs is where the doctor and his family lived. One day, a frantic mother arrived at the home carrying her young daughter Sally. The child had collapsed from severe abdominal pain. The doctor diagnosed appendicitis, but there was no time to delay surgery. Sally unfortunately passed away on the operating table. For years after, many believe Sally stayed to haunt the home, and the haunting grew infamous in 1993 when the house was rented to a young couple. It started when the couple's dog would growl at nothing and make even louder growls when near the upstairs nursery. Things began to take a violent turn when fires broke out in the house and a series of sinister attacks on the husband began. The former operating area would feel extremely cold, and objects would visibly move when the young man came close. He could feel scratches scratches on his chest and abdomen, but the ghost never attacked the wife or baby. Not only did the former residents experience the paranormal activity, but locals and other visitors of the home have experienced objects moving on their own, mysterious coldness, physical touches, video and investigative equipment that stopped working, trained guide dogs refusing to enter the nursery, and unexplained scratches or bruising on their bodies during and after their visits. Psychics have visited the home, and many have confirmed the presence of spirits in the home and have even communicated with them, and many have entered as skeptics and left believers. Due to the number of experiences in the home, it's gained a lot of media coverage from television channels including A&E, the Travel Channel, the Discovery Channel, and the Sci-Fi Channel. The home is not currently occupied but holds many guided ghost tours for both daytime and even overnight visits for the ghost lovers and paranormal investigators. Beware though, because a waiver is required due to the potential for personal injury, but no serious injuries have been reported since the last tenant in 1993.
Number 5 on this list is Stiver's School for the Arts. This is a high school that's attracted hundreds of artistic students from around the region for years. It's apparently a really good school, however, ever since a murder back in the 1920s, it's been deeply haunted. AGC writes, according to the online magazine Dayton Most Metro, a teacher named Mary Tyler was found dead in the pool with a locket in one hand and a broken pointer in the other. The teacher was reportedly involved with a senior student at the time of her death. He disappeared after her body was found and was never seen again. Officials believe the unnamed student tore his picture out of the teacher's locket so nobody would suspect him, according to the writer Julian Heisler. The school eventually covered over the pool, building a classroom on top of it. A trap door still leads down into the pool, which is used for storage now, Heisler said, but it seems Mary Tyler never left. Students and maintenance staff have reported Tyler's ghostly figure levitating in the abandoned pool and floating about the lower levels and the network of tunnels buried underneath the school, banging on pipes and wailing loudly wherever she goes, Dayton Most Metro reported. A floating dead body. Yeah, that sounds pretty haunted to me, guys. Ever since this ghostly incident, there have been tons of spooky moments reported by students. Lights flickering, temperature changes, items mysteriously moving around by themselves, and things of this nature happening regularly at this school. It's crazy that something that went down 100 years ago still has such a hold over this place, but literally a century later and we still haven't shaken the ghost of Mary Tyler. Hopefully the next century is a little bit less scary for the students at Stiver's School for the Arts. Number 4 on this list is the Cleveland Federal Reserve. The Cleveland Federal Reserve is where the money is. Now this isn't a comment on people being haunted by crippling debt, even though that's probably the most realistic thing I've ever said on this channel. No, this place is haunted by an actual poltergeist that you don't want to mess with. Matilda is the name of our ghost in question, and she's said to haunt the vault down below. Now the good thing about this place is that you actually can't even get to the haunted area. So even for those of you who are feeling daring, you aren't going to be able to go and visit Matilda because it's off limits to the public. Matilda used to work here and was deeply involved in the stock market. That's why when the market suffered a horrible crash in 1929, Matilda felt trapped and saw no other way than to take her own life. She did so in this building, and now it is forever haunted by her spirit passing through the underground walls, scaring all of those who work down there. It's hard to know how accurate this haunting really is because we don't really have any proof of it. That, however, is more due to the fact that it's super off limits and super well guarded vault that nobody can get to. If we can trust the verbal accounts of the people who've run into her, and there have been many, then we should definitely fear this vault. Number 3 on this list is Crybaby Bridge. This is definitely one of the most famous spots in the state when it comes to hauntings. This one specifically is the Rogues Hollow Crybaby Bridge and has a pretty sad and scary history. There are 2 legends that could be true in regards to this bridge. The first one says that the mother of a newborn child had a falling out with her lover. He abandoned her and she fell into a deep depression. She responded by throwing her newborn over the bridge and then followed that by throwing herself over as well. The second legend says that 2 parents of a newborn child were driving down the road. They got to the bridge, and on that bridge their car spun out on some black ice. The car crashed into a tree right after the bridge, killing both of the parents. The baby in the back of the car survived though, at least for a time. This road doesn't get traveled on often, and it was very cold that evening. When people eventually did come upon the crash, it was too late. Ever since this incident happened, this bridge has been rightfully avoided by the locals. The horrible sound of a baby crying can be heard echoing throughout the river that it passes over. They say that standing on this bridge for too long, it's not good for your brain or your mental state. That your sanity will slowly slip away from you, and any happiness and good feelings that you may have had will be sucked away down that river for good. Not a bridge that you should want to go down at all, so avoid it altogether. Number 2 on this list is Squire's Castle. So calling this place a castle is a bit of a stretch, because the castle was never actually built. News 5 Cleveland says, located in the North Chagrin Reservation of the Cleveland Metro Parks, this castle is a reflection of the builder Fergus B. Squires, who was a founding member of the Standard Oil Company. The actual castle was never built, so what it's standing on today was the shell of the gatekeeper's house for the estate. Legend has it that Fergus's wife, Rebecca, was very much a city girl who wanted nothing to do with nature. Stories say Rebecca was walking up the stone stairs when she became startled by something outside her window. In a panicked state, she dropped her lantern and tumbled to her death down the cold stone staircase. Ever since this tragedy happened, Rebecca's ghost has never left, haunting all of those who visit or stay at the estate and bemoaning her unfortunate fate. The thing is that she isn't the thing that most people are scared of. It's whatever the thing was that frightened Rebecca so much that she fell to her death. Rumor has it that there could be a werewolf-like beast roaming the estate. Dark red eyes have been seen in the night at afar, and the howls of some wolf-like creature have also been reported. Is it possible that Rebecca saw this werewolf so many years ago and that's what frightened her? Maybe she isn't trying to haunt the place at all, but actually trying to scare people away from this place so the same fate doesn't happen to them. Either way, I don't recommend going. And finally, number 1 on this list is the Lorraine Palace Theater. You know, for once, it would be really nice to go see some theater without fearing for your life. Sadly, you aren't gonna get that at the Lorraine Palace Theater. The Atlanta Journal-Constitution writes, the Lorraine Palace Theater opened in 1928 in Lorain, Ohio, near Cleveland. It seats just over 1,700 guests and was the first movie theater in the state to show talking pictures, according to the theater's website. Dave Hensley, a paranormal researcher and the founder of EVP Mediums, told the Chronicle-Telegram after investigating the palace that there are so many spirits there he couldn't even count them all. We got a name from a gentleman named Ed who said that he worked at the shipyard. That's profound because the shipyard was directly behind the palace. He claimed that he was murdered pushed downstairs, Henley said. There was a spirit who said that he died of drugs as well. And we had spirits that were killed in the 1924 tornado that hit Lorraine. That was pretty emotional, one of them said. My body flew, Henslett told the Chronicle. The theater's operation director told the newspaper most people in the area probably know about the ghosts and spirits that roam the palace's hallways. I think everybody in Lorain County has been privy to the rumors of the unexplained activity in the Lorraine Palace Theater, Chris Pataki said. In fact, a documentary on the haunted theater called Ghosts of the Palace is scheduled to debut at the movie house this weekend. Pretty ballsy move right there, guys, literally screening a movie about your haunted theater in said haunted theater. All of this though should make it very clear how haunted this place actually is. Literally everybody around this area knows about this spot. And whenever you're getting a full-on movie made about how specifically haunted you are, then you know that you've made it as a haunted location. Even though most people make it out of this theater unscathed, that can't be said for everybody. Attacks have been reported and left people feeling very emotionally and even physically scarred. Netflix is a thing for a reason now, guys. Let's use it.
Coming in at number 5, we have Tianducheng, China. Tianducheng is a town in the suburbs of Hangzhou, China, whose construction began around 2007. Built as an enormous luxury housing development, Tianducheng emulates the famous French City of Lights in everything, from the period-correct architecture to the 300-foot-tall miniature Eiffel Tower. It even has a replica fountain from the Luxembourg Gardens. The city centre is an abandoned copy of Paris that even features the Eiffel Tower, which is 1/3 of its original size. With a capacity for over 100,000 residents, the city has remained mostly abandoned except for the employees of a nearby French-themed amusement park, according to City Lab. Tianducheng lacks much of what Paris has to offer though, including people. The lack of people is mostly attributed to its odd location, as Tianducheng is surrounded mostly by farmland and odd dead-end roads that snake throughout the countryside. When it first opened its gates more than a decade ago, it was described as a ghost town, while many of its homes homes remain vacant, the population has grown into the thousands, and it attracts a steady stream of Chinese and international tourists, including newlyweds looking for a picture-perfect backdrop. In at number 4 we have Ruby, Arizona. Ruby, Arizona is one of the best preserved abandoned cities in the United States, filled with history and the shell of the city it used to be. By the 1870s, new prospectors made several additional claims, and the fledgling settlement formed at the mountain base was called Montana Camp. Other lead, copper and zinc veins were also found in the immediate vicinity, beckoning yet more miners to the fledgling settlement. Throughout the years, the city and mining company associated with it got passed down to many different owners, while in the 1914s, Andrew sold the store to Philip C. Clark, who soon built a bigger and better one just up the hill, the remains of which still stand today. Though Ruby was growing, it was still a lawless place, and finally Philip Clark became so concerned for his family's safety that he moved them away to nearby Oro Blanco. However, he continued to work towards growing the city of Ruby and amassed large amounts of land and cattle until 1920, when he sold the store to brothers John and Alexander Frazier. From 1934 to 1937, the Montana mine was the leading producer of lead and zinc in the state, and the third largest in silver production. However, the ore finally played out in 1940, and the town became a ghost. The mill operation was moved to Sahuarita. The post office closed forever on May 31st, 1941, though no records exist on the dollar amount taken from the Montana mine. One estimate puts the total for the Oro Blanco district at more than $10 million for the period between 1909 and 1949. The Ruby mines remained intact until 1970, when they finally collapsed. For decades, the area remained private because no access was allowed to anyone other than the owners. Ruby has suffered from vandalism and theft often. Today, Ruby remains private, owned by a couple of different families working to preserve the town and make it into a recreational area. The good news is they now allow visitors. The old settlement continues to boast more than 24 buildings. Only Vulture City rivals it in the number of remaining structures in a ghost town mining camp. In at number 3 we have Whittingham, Australia. Located 1400 miles northeast of Perth, Australia, lies Whittingham, a former blue asbestos mining town that has since been named the largest contaminated site in the southern hemisphere. Despite signs warning people to keep away, thousands of tourists visit each year, much to the risk of their own health. Up until the 1930s, the area surrounding Whittingham was largely unused until Langley Hancock discovered blue asbestos crocodilite in an area, unknowing at the time, but this is the most dangerous type of asbestos. It was typically used in rope lacking and pipe insulation, as well as in cement sheets and for ceiling tiles. During the 1950s, Whittingham was the area's largest settlement, with a peak population of an estimated 20,000 coming and going from the town. For over a decade, Whittingham was the only supplier of blue asbestos in Australia, exporting 150,000 tons. In 1966, the Whittingham Gorge mine was closed due to unprofitability and increasing concerns over the health of miners. The following year, Australia banned the mining of blue asbestos. Of those who worked and resided in the town, over 2,000 have since died from illnesses caused by asbestos, including lung cancer, asbestosis, and mesothelioma. In 2007, the town was completely delisted, meaning it was completely shut down and then removed from the map. The town has literally been wiped from the map. Local tourist brochures just leave a vague blank area where Whittingham actually is, and the national park don't feature the town despite covering everywhere else within a 1,000-kilometer radius. Coming in at number 2 we have Ashgabat, Turkmenistan. Close to the border of Iran, Ashgabat, Turkmenistan is a former Soviet Union country run by President Saparmurat Niyazov. Much of the city was destroyed by the 1948 Ashgabat earthquake, where buildings crumbled to the ground, but has since been extensively rebuilt under the rule of the new president. The president planned to create a golden area of Turkmenistan in 1991 with the building of Ashgabat. He did so by building the city with the most marble buildings in the world. Thus, Ashgabat, the Turkmenistan capital, is a city of marble buildings and fountains. It is also an empty city with a population of around 700,000 people. Though the majority of the population doesn't live in the city, they live in the suburbs that are located outside the city limits. The only residents in Ashgabat are made of marble, as is the whole city. The buildings in the city are all made of white marble. The marbled maze of buildings and statues is very much the facade of the museum district, and it is these images that have gone around the world showcasing what can be done with millions of dollars at your disposal. Governments, museums, and theatre buildings, as well as expenses as well as expanses of parks dominate the whole district. The unique looking architecture is nothing similar to that of any other city. There are few reasons why no one is permitted to live in the city, and for one is to keep the white marble clean. Another reason is that it gets so hot that it's not practical to walk in. Moreover, the public is forbidden to talk about the fact that the city is empty. Thus, one can only infer that the city was not built for the locals but used as a statue object to show the richness of the government. Today, the city is referred to as the City of the Dead because it appears so empty. This is in part also because of the country's isolated culture, as Turkmenistan is one of the least visited countries in the world. And finally, in at number 1 we have Hashima Island in Japan. Just 15 kilometers from Nagasaki and in front of the Japanese coastline, you'll find the abandoned island and city of Hashima. In the late 1950s, the island had a population of over 5,200 people. The people that resided on the island were mostly coal miners and their families. Since the island is so small at its peak in population, it was once the most densely populated place on the planet and 9 times the population density of Tokyo. Now the island is left completely abandoned and is effectively crumbling to pieces. The coal mining facility was previously called Battleship Island because its buildings and seawall make it resemble a warship. As for the island's fate, it was abandoned in the 1970s when petroleum fuels made coal obsolete. The island was built by Korean and Chinese prisoners who were forced to work after World War II. The conditions of these forced laborers were hard and some never made it back home. The people who worked here named the island Jail Island or even Hell Island. In 1974, the mine started to run out of coal and people left the island. Soon the island's uninhabited parts were reclaimed by nature. The weather conditions started affecting the concrete and buildings started falling apart. Sometimes people camped out here, but that was a very dangerous thing to do. The government wanted to discourage people from going over on their own, and therefore decided to open it to the public. Even though tourists are allowed to visit the island today, the echoes of the past still linger here. Fishermen who sail near the island claim they have seen strange flickering lights in the buildings, even though the island has no electricity. Strange noises have been heard and cold spots have been felt. People say that they had the sensation of being watched, and there were some claims of people that had been touched by unseen hands. Coming in at number 5 we have Grafton, Utah. Located just a few miles away from Zion National Park in Utah, the now abandoned town of Grafton can be found. The town was originally established in 1859 when 5 Mormon families nearby were led to establish a town they called Wheeler to plant cotton, which would have been a profitable commodity during the Civil War. After only 2 years, the town was struck by a massive flood starting on January 8th of 1862 that washed away the entire town. However, the pioneers did not give up that easily and moved about a mile upstream and founded a new town named Grafton. They grew cotton, alfalfa and wheat, but life was harsh and many residents lost their life due to the diseases and various accidents. The mortality rate was also extremely high, which accounts for about 77 total graves in the nearby cemetery. The town flourished for a while despite recurring floods, with a church and adobe schoolhouse being built in 1886, but when the Hurricane Canal was built in 1906, many families started to move to Rockville and Hurricane, and by 1920 only 3 families remained in the town, and in 1944 the town's last residents, Frank Russell and his wife Ellen, moved as well. And although the town is now well maintained by the non-profit volunteer organisation of the Grafton Heritage Partnership Project, its dark past can still be felt when exploring the area. People have reported hearing ghostly footsteps over the creaky floors in the empty buildings, as well as the breath of ghostly souls on the back of their necks. The entire town gives visitors a feeling as if being watched, and the shadowy figures can sometimes be spotted in the windows. Another visitor of the ghost town visited the basement of the Russell home and claimed that they found a chair sitting in the middle of the basement with a mark on it as if someone had recently sat on it. They had been exploring for over an hour at this point and had not encountered another person on the way to town or the entire time they were there, but for some reason the print looked brand new, with not a single speck of dust on it. After filming for a few moments in the basement and recording into the silence, they felt a rush of air, as if someone had just walked past them, which scared them, and they decided it was time to leave. There are even rumours of skinwalkers lurking in the area. Even the cemetery itself has many reports of people hearing crying, laughing and chilling screams, especially late in the day and when it's overcast. Some people have even seen a woman in a dress with her hair in a bun walking around the cemetery sobbing, but when they approached her she disappeared into thin air. There is no doubt that there is definitely a very uncomfortable feeling while walking around the gravestones, which isn't surprising knowing the sad history of the people laid to rest there. In at number 4 we have Deadwood, South Dakota. The town of Deadwood is located in South Dakota and gained attraction in the gold rush of 1876. In 1875, a miner named John B. Pearson found gold in a narrow canyon in these northern Black Hills. This canyon became known as Deadwood Gulch because of many dead trees that lined the canyon walls at the time. Practically overnight, the tiny gold camp boomed into a town that played by its own rules that attracted outlaws, gamblers, and gunslingers along with gold seekers. At its height, the city had a population of 5,000, attracting larger-than-life Old West figures back then. The business district comprised largely of saloons, dance halls, card parlors, and bodacious bordellos. They were all hungry for gold and did whatever they had to in order to get some. The business did whatever they could to serve the gold diggers, and sometimes that led to a little bit of conflict. Because of this, the now ghost town still lives with stories of its dead residents haunting present-day hotels and saloons. In 1876, Deadwood survived a smallpox epidemic that nearly wiped out the whole town. There were so many infected that multiple tents were erected to quarantine the stricken. In addition, it suffered 3 major fires. One devastating fire occurred on September 26, 1879, destroying more than 300 buildings and consuming the belongings of many inhabitants. Many numerous economic hardships also followed, pushing it to the verge of becoming another Old West ghost town. One of the most paranormally active sites in the ghost town is the Adams House. Built in 1892 after owner W.E. Adams had a stroke on the premises, his wife was so disturbed by the sounds of his ghost still walking around, rocking the rocking chairs and so forth, that she moved and left the house untouched, exactly as it was when he died. Now visitors and employees report having seen a rocking chair rock on its own, encountered a shadowy man standing at an upstairs window, and heard voices and footsteps in rooms throughout the house. In at number 3 we have Garnet, Montana. Found in Montana, the abandoned town of Garnet was another gold rush town that drew thousands of hopeful miners. Between 1862 and 1916, gold was mined from the area. During the peak of the town, it had hotels, saloons, schools, and stores in the midst of the town's biggest years. A 1912 fire burned down half of the town, and what was lost was not rebuilt. Many of the remaining structures were in poor condition even when they were lived in and regularly visited. This marked the decline of the town, as after 1917 the mine began to offer less and less, and by the time of World War I the town was almost fully abandoned. Garnet is perhaps the best preserved coast town in the state of Montana. There are plenty of people who believe the abandoned buildings are still home to some of the residents who once lived there. Some visitors have reported hearing laughter and music coming from Kelly's Saloon, which is the most common occurrence. I quote, "We didn't experience anything bordering on the supernatural during our visit, but we did find the beautifully preserved artifacts to be windows into Garnet's incredible past." Coming in at number 2 we have Jerome, Arizona. Located in Arizona, you will find the ghost town of Jerome. Once a copper mining town, Jerome was the 3rd largest town in the early 1900s. Its streets were filled with 37 saloons, 13 bordellos, and a meager 4 churches in 1917, and again in 1926 after a mine blast damaged the original. A series of ill-fated events at this site would almost lead one to call it cursed. When the Great Depression hit, conditions in the town took a sharp downturn. Plagued with man-made disasters and poor fortune, Jerome's population gradually dwindled from thousands to somewhere between 20 to 50 residents. Finally in 1950 the town was abandoned for good. A number of visitors have recounted other mysterious sightings. Visual apparitions range from human-shaped figures that roam the halls and stairways of the old hotel to a friendly animal that is said to scratch and meow at the doors. Additionally, one of the town's most well-known ghosts is said to lurk at the town's community centre. Formerly called Lawrence Memorial Hall, the building is more often familiarly termed Spook Hall due to several strange happenings. With all the other apparitions wandering about this historic town, the cemetery, of course, known as the most haunted place in the whole town. Visitors here have made numerous reports of dark figures moving about, the sound of ethereal footsteps, and the sounds of distant voices. The old cemetery includes graves dating from 1897 to 1942. And finally in at number 1 we have Cerro Gordo, California. Cerro Gordo is a ghost town located in Death Valley and is considered one of the best abandoned places in California. Cerro Gordo means fat hills in Spanish. It was named this for the vast amount of silver it contained. By the end of 1869 the city flourished and became well known for its promising business. By 1871 Cerro Gordo was well established as a mining town. The American Hotel was completed that year, as were several other permanent structures, a general store, restaurants and saloons. saloons. At its height, the town had 5,000 residents. In 1875, Cerro Gordo suffered a series of setbacks, necessitating the shutdown of its furnaces. These problems resulted from a scarcity of ore in the mine, which had lasted for several months, and the temporary drying up of its water supply. In addition, by late 1876, a fire accident happened through some of the mine buildings and the union shaft, and the furnaces were closed the following February due to the disaster. A more lethal blow was dealt by falling lead and silver prices, effectively ending this era of activity at Cerro Gordo. Because of all the tragedy that occurred in Cerro Gordo, there's been multiple paranormal investigations held at the grounds of the abandoned town. While the new owner of the town was purchasing it, he was warned that they might have some visitors hanging around, and by visitors they meant spirits. One of the now owner's ghost stories goes along the lines of, as he was walking toward the bunkhouse, he looked at the window, the curtain pulled to the side and a little face poked out. Under the assumption that the contractors were staying in the bunkhouse, he asked when they were leaving, and he was told that they're gone for 2 weeks. So a little uneasy, he locked up the door and went for a hike. By the time he got back, the kitchen light was on, even with the lock still on. Coming in at number 5, we have Goldfield, Arizona. Being deemed as one of Arizona's most haunted places, we have the town of Goldfield. Founded in 1893, Goldfield was a promising land for gold mining. The town grew rapidly, gaining 1,500 residents during its first year. The space was quick to build businesses including stores, a blacksmith, a butcher, a brewery, and 3 saloons. Though the town of Goldfield met its fall just as quickly as it was built up. After 5 short years, the gold ran out and people began to dwindle, eventually leaving it fully abandoned, securing its ghost town status. Being classified as a ghost town doesn't necessarily mean a place is haunted by ghosts, but this is not the case for the Goldfield ghost town. There's plenty of documentation and investigations that point to Goldfield being a paranormal active ground. It is known that a mysterious figure lurks within the shadows of the Goldfield ghost town, Bordello. It is unclear who this spirit would have been in life, yet it is commonly believed he was once a miner who lived in the town. Unexplainable knocks and bangs are heard in the building, and some unfortunate visitors have been scratched. This activity is attributed to a dark character who's usually seen wearing a cowboy hat. Just on the horizon of the Goldfield ghost town sits a landscape made ominous by its name and the legend surrounding it. The Superstition Mountains are cloaked in mystery and at the center of many fables, making them notorious among the paranormal community. The Superstition Mountains carry many secrets, the most famous being the location of a supposed deposit of gold and riches in the Lost Dutchman's gold mine. A curse has kept this treasure safe since the days of Goldfield's mining boom. Many have set out to locate these riches, and many have returned empty-handed or found only death. Countless adventurers have perished in the Arizona heat pursuing this chase. Their ghosts are said to now haunt the mountainside. Other secrets of the mountain have people believing that the hill is a place where evil spirits hid and told stories of a devil that lived behind the mountain. There's also a rumored apparition of a hugely tall skeleton named the Borrego Phantom, which appears to those exploring the mountain after dark. Another layer of creepiness is added to the mountain by the local legend that reptile-looking people surface there after dark. All of these creepy mysteries are summed up pretty nicely in the Superstition Mountain's name. In at number 4 we have Glen Rio, New Mexico. Found on the state border of Texas and New Mexico lies the town of Glen Rio. Founded in 1901, it was a town where wheat and cattle farmers settled and grew a community. Being divided between 2 states made for some unusual customs in Glen Rio. The mail would arrive at a train depot on the Texas side, but would have to be transported to the post office on the New Mexico side. The Texas side was part of a dry county, so all the bars were on the New Mexico side. Because the gasoline tax was higher in New Mexico, all the service stations were on the Texas side. By 1920, Glen Rio had a hotel, a hardware store, and a land office, as well as several grocery stores, service stations, and cafes. Though Glen Rio's permanent population never rose above 30 people, the town survived with its tourist-based businesses catering to the many travelers along Route 66. By 1985, only 2 residents remained in the small town, and the Texas post office was the only business open. It too has long since closed. Other buildings have overgrown sites, missing windows, or debris surrounding them. The detritus of 4 decades when Glen Rio welcomed tens of thousands, fed and entertained them, and sent them on their way towards Chicago or California. In at number 3 we have Nevada City in Montana. Miners settled in Nevada City in 1963, along with establishing their homes and businesses in this new town. Located in southwestern Montana, the town is 1.5 miles from Virginia City. The town was thriving up until 1876 when the gold miners moved to other promising sites. In 1896, the Connery Plaza Mining Company destroyed most of the city's buildings. The company dredged the gulch and later abandoned it, leaving heavy wooden barges. This abandoned town being haunted is old news, as the Nevada City Hotel is reported to be frequented by the apparition of a road agent who lost their life nearby, according to online sources. Visitors have also reported hearing footsteps in the hallways and seeing shadowy figures standing behind their reflections in mirrors. Additionally, the spirit of an older cowboy figure who never speaks but lurks in the hotel rooms and even sits at the bar in the Virginia City. Back when the hotel operated, guests also complained of a weeping woman, always in the same room, only to be told there was no guest in the room in question. In at number 2 we have Custer, Idaho. The mining town of Custer was born in 1879 by gold miners looking for their next gold hotspot. Prospectors discovered gold in what would become known as the Yankee Fork area of central Idaho in 1867. The area was worked on a small scale for more than a decade before the discovery of General Custer Mine. The General Custer Mining Company closed in 1888 and the district experienced a sharp decline. In 1899, the town of Custer has 5 saloons, 3 stores, a hotel and 3 boarding houses, but the town never established even one church. By 1910, most of the mines in the area were closed and the Yankee Forks boom years came to an end. The combined population of Custer and the nearby Bonanza was just 66 people. The Silver Messenger reports just 2 families remaining in Custer in 1911 and then being fully abandoned the year following. Today it has been purchased by the US Forestry Service and, in conjunction with the Friends of Custer Society, is slowly being made into a historic site. Some original buildings have already been renovated, some are in process and many others are slated to be restored. Several buildings lost in a 1960s grass fire are due to be replaced with replicas. The Forgotten Town is a landmark for many people such as tourists and especially paranormal investigators. In the old schoolhouse is a museum containing items left behind and showcases the town's unique history. Although interesting, you can't help but get an eerie feeling thinking about the people who once owned these items, as walking into one of these structures is like walking back in time. To think this town was once active with human energy and miners working every single day. And finally, in at number 1 we have South Pass City, Wyoming. Only about 10 miles north of the Oregon Trail is the shell of a town that used to be a busy gold mining camp. Established in a small valley along the banks of Willow Creek, the town was born in 1867. The town was built there because gold was discovered in the Wind River Mountains. By 1868, South Pass City boasted over 250 buildings, 1,000 people, and hundreds of claims. The town was extremely busy as its half-a-mile-long main street boasted numerous hotels, restaurants, general stores, 2 newspapers, doctors, a bowling alley, and dozens of saloons. The mining district continued to grow to as many as 3,000 residents. Miners looking for investors and newspapers promoting further settlement in the area exaggerated the region's amount of gold. But for South Pass City, its great success wouldn't last, and just 2 years after its establishment would begin to show its first signs of declining. Hitting a fall in early 1869, the town resurged briefly after outsider capital was poured into the area, but would fall again as expenses and hardships to recover the gold proved too costly for most miners. By 1872, the town was only occupied by only a few hundred people. In the end, South Pass would become a permanent ghost town. By 1949, the last of the pioneer families had moved on from South Pass City, and the buildings had fallen into disrepair. The grounds of the old town are known to be haunted, and Highway 287 that follows the route of the Oregon Trail over South Pass, which is the reason South Pass City ever existed, has had its fair share of ghost sightings. According to a local ghost story, a woman was driving home from a long day in Danver. Her friend had fallen asleep in the passenger seat. After passing through Jeffrey City, the driver spotted a dark, hunched figure walking toward the road in the sagebush. About a half-mile later, she saw the same figure closer to the road. She noted his pig coat as he became clearer. About a half-mile later, still thinking about this man and his surprising reappearance, she reached over to wake her friend and request she take a turn driving. As her friend awoke, she saw the same man at the edge of the road, just crossing the white line onto the highway next to the car. Screaming, they accelerated away and compared descriptions. It was certainly the same man.
Kicking us off at number 5, we have the St. Louis Cemetery, number 1.
The first of 3 Roman Catholic cemeteries in New Orleans, this is a legendary site for ghost spotting, although you'll need a vetted tour guide to get in. Break this rule and who knows what kind of curse you'll incur. The cemetery is full of above ground tombs, which some refer to as cities of the dead. These vaults are largely from the 18th and 19th centuries, although some of the graves date back to early 1700s. Of course, with all sorts of above ground burials, one would expect to see plenty of ghosts here. Visitors claim to see manifestations of ghosts walking around, and an abundance of amateur photographers claim to have captured ghost orbs on film. Digital too. Some ghosts are more famous than others, but at the St. Louis Cemetery number 1, none are as well renowned as Mary Laveau. The voodoo queen of New Orleans, Laveau made a name for herself through fortune telling, occult studies, and herbal medicines. These days, gawkers claim to see her floating through the cemetery where she's buried, wearing her signature bright colored clothing and white turban. Guests have reported being scratched, pinched, shoved, or even coming down with sudden unexplainable illnesses after seeing her ghost. For many years, followers of the occult would visit her tomb and mark it with 3 X's, but this led to more severe vandalism and it has been refurbished since. Laveau isn't the only ghost to roam the graves, but she is definitely the most well known. Just watch your back if you choose to visit and stick with the tour guide. Next up at number 4, the Hanging Jail. The Gothic Jail of De Ridder was built in 1915. Anything Gothic has a higher chance of being haunted, it's just how architecture works. That's why the Notre Dame is so full of ghosts. That and the whole Claude Frollo situation. Spirit appreciators in the know believe that the jail is haunted by 2 men hung for the slaying of a taxi driver. Joe Genna and Moulton Brasseau hired a taxi driver late one night and told him to drive. For reasons still up in the air, they killed him. Not knowing what to do with the body, the 2 men dumped it in the old Pickering Mill pond and ran off into the night. Maybe they drove off. I wonder if they took the cab. The body was found and traced back to the 2 would-be on-the-run murderers, and such they were convicted and then hung from the 3rd floor gallows. The interesting thing about the gallows though is that a spiral staircase circles around the noose. So there's a vertigo-inducing set of stairs surrounding the ominously hanging noose. Definitely a ghost creator if I've ever seen one. In addition to this lovely feature, there's also an underground tunnel connecting the jail to the next door courthouse. That is a tunnel you would not want to find yourself in after hours. Who knows what kind of crooked-necked wailing ghosts you find down there. Of course, there are plenty of people who claim to have captured photos of the ill-fated duo along with many other unlucky lawbreakers. Just remember kids, if you want to be a ghost, constantly do things that you'll regret. That way, you'll have all sorts of reasons to stick around for the afterlife. Coming in at number 3, we have the Dauphine Orleans Hotel. What was once a bordello is now a very popular hotel and bar. Jilted lovers, recovering soldiers, mistreated women, they all have a chance to haunt this New Orleans landmark. Of all the stories, there are 4 that tend to come up no matter who you ask. The first is that of a lost bride, thought to be the spirit of a young woman named Millie. She was working for the bar as a courtesan when she met a dapper young man and they decided to get married. However, on the morning of the wedding, Millie's groom-to-be was shot dead in a gambling dispute. Distraught, Millie waited for days for her fiancé to show up and never took her wedding dress off. For years, she would wear the white dress around the bar, hoping that someday he would show up. Now her ghost wanders the hotel in her dress, waiting for her love. Another classic story is that of the dancing girl. A young teen has been seen dancing around in the ballroom. Many a drunk guest has claimed that a young girl helped them to their room, all the while dancing as if she were floating on air. There's also the tale of the rebel, a ghost dressed in a dark Confederate uniform. While no battles took place in New Orleans, plenty of wounded soldiers would end up in the city for rest and recovery, and maybe a little bit of time at the bordello. This ghost has been seen pacing the outer courtyard, earning the nickname the Worried General. And of course, the bar itself, known as May's Place, is full to the brim with ghosts. Employees claim to have seen all sorts of unexplainable stuff, from glasses falling down from high shelves to locked doors opening up on their own to brochures swirling around like fall leaves. If you're looking for a haunted overnight stay, the Dauphine Orleans is probably your best bet. Don't go paying any of the ghosts for services though, you probably won't get what you're expecting. Coming in at number 2, Myrtle's Plantation. Built in the late 1700s, this is considered by some to be one of America's most haunted homes. Made extra legendary by the multiple photographs taken featuring ghosts, you'd be hard-pressed to find an ectoplasm enthusiast who hasn't heard of young Chloe. Chloe was a young slave punished for eavesdropping on the family. She took her revenge later on in the form of a poisoned birthday cake. It was served up to the owners of the house, and within 3 hours, 3 people were dead. Apparently that wasn't enough revenge for one lifetime though, as Chloe is still said to haunt the plantation. 2 different pictures have been taken with apparent ghostly qualities to them. One is a photo of the facade of the house, and if you look carefully in the corner, a ghostly visage can be seen. Another is of 2 tourists taking a selfie in front of a window, and Chloe can be seen peering out from in front of the curtains. While famous, some folks claim that they could be doctored. What do you think? After the Chloe incident, many later owners suffered death and murder tragedies while living at the house. Their ghosts have also been seen roaming the grounds. These days, most of the scary stuff is directly ghost related, so I don't know if it's still dangerous or just a spooky tourist attraction. Maybe the spirits like the attention they're getting from the public and would rather not kill anyone else. And finally at number 1, the Lalaurie Mansion. Back in the 1830s, the Lalaurie family was extremely well-to-do, especially Delphine Lalaurie. She was a well-respected member of society and known for throwing lavish parties. All was well and everyone had their fun until disaster struck. A fire swept through the building, burning much of it to the ground. Among the rubble, firefighters found the bodies of chained and tortured slaves in a hidden chamber. It appears that Delphine would perform unnecessary surgery on these poor helpless folks too. By the time all this was figured out, the Lalauries had fled the country, never to be seen again. With no way for justice to be served, the souls of the people held here remained, looking for revenge. Pretty much all future owners of the property quickly left after moving in. The ghosts haunting the walls are pretty aggressive too, with many people reporting bizarre physical assaults by forces unseen. Today, ghost hunters say that it's the most haunted house in the French Quarter. Historians dispute this, but that's not going to stop the Phantom fans from traveling to the Haunted Mansion.
Number 5 on this list is Pink Place Market. This would be a really nice place to do your shopping if it wasn't so freaking haunted. Mental Floss says, as one of the most famous public markets in the country, Pike Place Market is known for a lot of things. Fresh coffee, fresher fish, and paranormal activity. The Seattle Times reported on a number of figures who supposedly walk through walls or vanish into thin air. One older gentleman named Frank apparently likes to introduce himself to the living outside of a restaurant at the Alibi Room. Various other spirits also have names, like Princess Angeline, Madame Nora, and the Fat Lady Barber. At one point in the early 1900s, one section of the market was home to a mortuary. Currently operating in the basement of that space is Kell's Irish Restaurant and Pub. Its manager, Patrick McAleese, recalled some eerie instances to the Times, such as a wall mirror inexplicably shattering, only to have the shards fall into a neat pile. You think someone must be pulling your leg, he said, but then you don't see anyone. So it seems that we have a full-on team of ghosts here. A small village of characters who are all moving around this mall marketplace in Seattle. Because there are so many of these paranormal entities, it makes it extremely difficult for anyone to get any shopping done without having some type of ghostly interference. You can't seem to get a good coffee here without a strong side of haunting along with it. There have been multiple attempts to rid the area of ghosts, but it just simply won't do. No matter how many experts are brought in here to cleanse the area or to put these spirits at rest, they continue to terrorize the people here, which is really too bad because from what I've heard, they have some really nice shops in here. Number 4 on this list is COS. So this is a big store in New York that has quite the haunted and terrifying history to it. Mental Floss says, New Yorkers can brush elbows with a ghost while doing some light shopping in Soho. The legend dates back to 1799 when Gulielma Elmore Sands tried to elope with her fellow boarding house tenant Levi Weeks. 11 days later, her body was found at the bottom of the well in Lispenard's Meadows, which is now 129 Spring Street. Since 2014, it's been the site of a COS retail store. Levi was arrested, tried, and acquitted in the first major murder trial in America that was fully recorded by a court stenographer. His attorneys, Alexander Hamilton and Aaron Burr. But Sans Ghosts is said to roam the area, a warning to other girls who might try to run off with their lovers. Curious shoppers can still see the well in COS, just head to the back of the men's department in the basement. Okay, so I have a few questions with this one. Why, after someone was literally murdered here, do we still have this death well in this store? And also, what is a well doing in a store in the first place? Like, I get that it was the 1800s or whatever, but like, we just kept that thing as time went on. Someone literally died in that thing, and now people are wondering why there are ghosts around this place. Like, no wonder Sans Ghosts is still chilling in this area. Even she is probably wondering why this well is still here. Also, can I just make a comment about ghosts in general? I get that they want to warn us about stuff and all of that, but like, why can't they just leave us a nice note or, I don't know, sit down and have a conversation? Why do they need to freak the hell out of people and just leave people confused as to what they want? Anyways, this place is going to remain haunted for a while until someone deals with that well. I'd conduct your shopping elsewhere if I was you. Number 3 on this list is the Cherryvale Mall. This is just a mall that, for whatever reason, has decided that it wants to be haunted. Mental Floss says, since its opening in 1973, the Cherryvale Mall in Rockford, Illinois has been the site of some spooky vibes. The Rock River Times noted that mall employees reported feeling watched or followed after the venue closed at night. Others have reported that certain stores would be a mess in the morning with clothing scattered or displays knocked over, even if the space was cleaned before being locked up. And on an even more unsettling note, some even claimed that bathroom doors were held shut by an unknown force. So basically, for no good reason, this mall is just haunted now. Now it's either that, or this mall is just regularly hit with burglary. Maybe the things are moved because people have been stealing stuff and then just don't put everything back the way that they found it when they first got there. Or, and this one's a long shot, but some people are just pranking the hell out of this mall and creating the legend of a haunting here for some reason. Like a Scooby-Doo-esque vibe where they're really trying to do something else at the mall and need people to leave it alone because they're scared. I don't know, I'm just trying to think of some reason why this mall would be haunted because there really isn't a good one. Comment down below if you guys know what could be causing this mall to be the way that it is. Number 2 on this list is the Diamond Center. The Diamond Center is located in Anchorage, Alaska, and it's very haunted. Alaska doesn't have that many people that live there. It's the largest state in America, and yet it has less than 1 million residents, which just makes what they did with this mall so much more disrespectful. A golden rule of thumb is do not build big stuff on top of ancient Native American burial sites. Well, guess what? They built the Diamond Mall on an ancient burial ground of Native Alaskans. Sure enough, what happens when you do that? Well, some pretty bad things. This mall is almost impossible to shop in now because of this, and honestly, rightfully so. You should never be building stuff on this land to begin with, but just think about how big Alaska is and how few people live there. Like, guys, we couldn't have just moved the mall a kilometer that way and built it over there? I mean, I think that you have the space for it considering you're freaking Alaska. Ghosts and spirits run rampant here, and many visitors and employees have had harrowing experiences with them. Some have even reported being attacked by these spirits and been told that they have to leave. Sadly, these people don't control what the mall does, and now that it's been put down, the wealthy people who own it, they don't seem to care about these ghostly appearances. And finally, number 1 on this list is Toys R Us. So I know that Toys R Us isn't necessarily a mall, but to a kid it certainly is, and let me tell you, if you're a child, then do not go to this specific Toys R Us. The one that I'm talking about is located in Sunnyvale, California, and it's very haunted. Mental Floss says, a haunted toy store sounds like a solid horror movie plot, but it's rumored to be a reality in Sunnyvale, California. According to Stranger Dimensions, the legend goes as such. The store was built on property that was formerly a plantation. The plantation's owner, Martin Murphy, hired a preacher named Johnny Johnson. Crazy Johnny, as the preacher was nicknamed, was in love with Murphy's daughter. Elizabeth. Unfortunately, Elizabeth was planning on marrying a lawyer, and as the story has it, Johnny was angrily chopping wood one day and fatally wounded himself by accident. His ghost reportedly wanders the land now home to the Toys R Us looking for Elizabeth. The usual objects coming off the shelves and footsteps have been reported, but the best anecdote was of employees once hearing a voice whisper, "The Lord giveth and the Lord taketh away," over the intercom system. Imagine hearing that over the intercom. How on earth could you ever show up to your work the next day? Like, that's it, guys. I am done. I am fully out of there if that's what's coming on over the intercom. I also want to know, what is this ghost referencing? What is he planning on giving, or what's he planning on taking away? Unless he really is just citing the Lord and saying that. Toy stores are supposed to be ghost-free. There isn't supposed to be some haunted menace terrorizing the people who come and work here. That isn't the case at the Sunnyvale Toys R Us, and that's why I'd be buying my toys elsewhere if I was you.
Coming in number 5, Centralia, Pennsylvania. Sounds like a nice enough place, right? Who would abandon a prosperous coal mining community filled with interesting folks and a fun name? Well, anyone who likes to breathe things other than noxious gas. Oh, this one is less a mystery and more of a straight up fact, but the abandonment is super scary regardless of how you look at it. Way back in the day, Centralia was bustling. Rich veins of coal were discovered underneath the earth here, and folks were really excited to bring it up to the surface. What better way to make a profit? Unfortunately, this subterranean resource and favorite of Minecraft kids across the globe is also the reason for Centralia's downfall. The very same stuff that brought about plenty of business also made the town uninhabitable. Tragic, and maybe a nice little microcosm of the human experience. Apparently a landfill burn spread a little further than folks were expecting and ignited the underground coal. From an abandoned coal mine to the rich veins of black gold underground, this fire spread like, well, wildfire, scorching everything around. 140 acres of town, gone, just like that. A lot of it is still standing, but it's not safe to be around. The underground fires belch all sorts of horrid smoke, and many large sinkholes opened up due to the fire's influence. These days you might sense a presence or two while passing by, but don't worry, they're not ghosts, not yet anyways. Of the few thousand who used to live there, only about a half dozen remain. They refused to abandon their once lovely town, determined to live amidst the smoke and gas, the fire and flames. It doesn't look like the fires are going out anytime soon either. Some estimates see the blaze continuing on for a few hundred years, thanks to the constant supply of fuel underground. Coming in number 4, we've got Deception Island, Antarctica. Another wild and wonderful name. If I could choose to name the place I lived in anything, Deception would definitely be on the list. That's the kind of town that famous folk albums get named after, a place of legend for miles around. A place of rest, perhaps, or place of mystery. Deception is often thought of as a negative thing. Nobody likes being lied to, but if it's done well enough, deception can achieve plenty of things. But I'm getting off topic. We should be discussing the actual abandoned place, full of mystery, full of danger. Deception Island was a long-used whaling station back in the day. Norwegian folks would post up there for long stretches of time, enjoying the island's safe natural harbor. Eventually it became known for its research potential, attracting all sorts of folks from Britain and Chile. Now, I know what you're all thinking. A research base out in the middle of deep freeze nowhere. Well, there's gotta be some sort of lunatic alien there, morphing into different shapes and eating everyone for breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And my mind went to the same place. But even after all of this, the island was also used as a British base during World War II, so maybe less deadly aliens after all, because the soldiers would have run into something like that. Although this island is also home to the largest cemetery in Antarctica, so chew on that for however long you need to. These days, the area is protected as a heritage site, so all of the abandoned, decrepit shacks, huts, and buildings are still there to be seen. Who knows what secrets and spirits lurk within, perishing due to Cold War or something more supernatural. Oh, and one last thing about this location. Even though it's as cold as ice and difficult for any living being to survive out here, there is something else that makes it even more dangerous. There are occasional volcanic eruptions on the island. Pardon me? So yeah, you'd best stay far, far away from this long abandoned haven. Even haven seems like a bit of a misnomer, don't you think? Coming in number 3, we've got Glen Rio, New Mexico / Texas. Or should I say New Texaco? Maybe that's a little cheesy for your liking, but I'll say it anyway. This border town was once a hotspot for tourists, motorists, evangelists, and top 5 lists. Still is, considering that last one. However, like so many spots built along old school highways, this town relied heavily on those just passing through. So when a much bigger, faster, safer highway opened up up far away from Glen Rio's limits, the whole place saw some terrible downswing. Gas stations, eateries, general stores, and mechanics all found that there wasn't much to do if the highway traffic wasn't coming through. A tough break for sure. What remains could pass for a location out of a new Fallout game. Empty buildings adorned with imagery consistent with the campy American dream. Burnt out husks of old cars, never to rev their engines again. Empty sun-bleached motels with rotted out mattresses and busted windows. If anyone wanted to live their post-apocalyptic dream life, here would be the place. In fact, it wouldn't surprise me if a few ghouls were roaming the wastes, eking out a modest life amidst the emptiness. When something so obviously meant to be jam-packed with people is devoid of all life, it can be extremely unnerving, and Glen Rio exemplifies this in spades. If I were to visit, I would expect dead silence. However, were some old-fashioned scratchy radio tunes to start playing, I would understand. That's just the ghosts of those who believed in the town trying to boogie after hours. Coming in number 2, we've got Oficina Chacabuco in Chile. A lot of ghost towns are left abandoned, with the occasional explorer stumbling through to see what life was all about. When whatever the town relied upon for prosperity, whether it be natural resources, tourism, or celestial protection, runs dry, people drift away. Over time, that means the town is no longer what it used to be, a shell, a husk. It's sad, but it's also just the natural byproduct of industrialization. If a place can no longer be useful, it's cut. However, some people can find other uses for these sinister feeling places. Oficina Chacabuco is just such a place. Making its money through nitrate mining at one point, this spot lost a lot of business when petroleum-based fertilizers became the next big thing. Without any other resources to rely upon, those who made their living here had to hightail it out. This left the remote town empty for a number of years. However, during General Pinochet's bloody rule in the 70s, this place was used for something else entirely. Political prisoners would be forcefully brought here and left to fend for themselves in the ghost town. They couldn't escape either, as the regime set up a wicked barrier of barbed wire and landmines. I'm sure more than one individual tried their best to escape, only to end up on the receiving end of some of these implements of death. So whether the town is haunted by the souls of those who lost their livelihood or by those who fought against a dictatorship, it's an extra ghastly ghost town indeed.
In 5th place, we have Isla de las Muñecas, Mexico. Decided to kick off today by being an overachiever. This is an entire abandoned island. The island of the dolls in Mexico is like something straight out of a horror movie, but my kind of horror movie. Located on Texuelo Lake, it is home to hundreds of hanging, slowly decaying dolls, thanks to a man named Don Julian Santana. Over 50 years ago, Don Santana left his wife and child and moved onto an island on Texuelo Lake in the Exoquimilicos canals. According to him, a young girl actually drowned in the lake in the 1950s, and Don Julian Santana devoted his life to honoring this lost soul by collecting and hanging up dolls by the hundreds. Eventually, he transformed the entire island into a doll-infested wonderland. Now, he began collecting lost dolls from the canals and the trash near his island home. He's also said to have traded produce he grew to locals for more dolls. Don didn't really clean up the dolls or attempt to fix them, but he rather put them up with missing eyes and limbs, covered in dirt, and generally in whatever ramshackle state he found them in. Even when dolls arrived in good shape, the wind and weather turned them into cracked and distorted versions of themselves. Don also kept his cabin filled with the dolls, which he dressed in headdresses, sunglasses, and other various accessories. Despite the fact that most people found the island frightening, Don saw the dolls as beautiful protectors, and he welcomed visitors, whom he would, show around, charging a small fee for taking photos. In 2001, Don Santana was found drowned in the same area in which he believed that small child had passed away. According to legend, the dolls in the island are haunted by the spirits of the dead girl, and perhaps even by Don himself. Okay, who wants to go on a road trip with me? Anyone?
Oh, thanks.
In 3rd place, time to visit the Bodie State Historic Park. So formerly a genuine gold mining town, located east of the Sierra Nevada mountain range in Mono County, California, and now a national landmark, it is known as one of the best preserved ghost towns in the world. It is named after W.S. Bodie, first name unknown, but rumored to be either William or Waterman, who discovered gold in 1859 in an area now known as Brody Bluff. He tragically passed in a snowstorm that same winter, and was never present for what came to be. According to pioneer Judge McClinton, the district's name was changed from the proper spelling of B-O-D-E-Y to B-O-D-Y, and then a few other phonetic variations, to eventually B-O-D-I-E, after a painter in the nearby boomtown of Aurora lettered a sign as such. An accidental typo that stuck through history, which is a good reminder to proofread your work. I don't do it enough. While the output from the mine is largely insignificant in terms of mining history, the violence and early endings to lives tell a different story. And a particularly harsh winter between 1878 and 79 claimed hundreds of lives, with many others perishing from falling timbers and explosions underground. So Bodie as a town grew to have a reputation for violence and lawlessness. And unlike other mining camps at the time, killings were daily events. Robberies, stage holdups, and fights happened at such a frequency that no complete record could be kept. Reverend F.M. Warrington would describe the area in 1881 as a sea of sin, lashed by the tempests of lust and passion. The first of 4 mysterious fires tore through the business district in 1892, the next destroying the town mill in 1912, and another destroying the same mill again in 1898. The last of the unknown fires demolished most of what was left of the now ghost town in 1932, taking many lives way too soon in the process. So when the last producing mine shut down after 1945, very few people were left living in what was left of the town, and all eventually met untimely ends. One man shot his wife unprompted, and 3 other men from the town took it upon themselves to take his life for that act. So according to historians, the ghost of that man would visit the 3 men after his passing, shaking his fist and appearing as if he was cursing them out. Those men soon died of mysterious diseases and illnesses. Visitors to the area have reported meeting spirits that leave them feeling suffocated, seeing doors open and close on their own, and rocking chairs that may or may not have a menacing older lady staring them down, or even the empty chair rocking on its own. Though Bodie might be a bit of a tourist destination nowadays, but if you remove anything from the land, like I'm talking like a pebble, you'll be cursed with remorse and tragedy. The park keeps a logbook of all letters and items returned to them, with each thief writing an apology note to Bodie for what was taken. The curse is upheld by the ghosts of residents past who guard against thieves and protect the town's treasures. Okay, so kleptos, steer clear or be cursed. In second place, we have the island of Poveglia. Yep, another entire abandoned island. This one's a little creepier though. So the island is located in the lagoon near Venice and is famous for being one of the most haunted places in Italy. Tourists and locals alike are banned from the island, which was used for centuries as a place to exile the sick to prevent the spread of disease and contain the mentally ill in an asylum built in the late 1800s. Yes, I'll backtrack and elaborate. So in 1348, the bubonic plague arrived in Venice and Poveglia, like many other small islands at the time, and it became a quarantine colony. The plague on average killed like 1 out of 3 Europeans, by the way. So fearing the unbridled spread of the disease, Venice exiled many of its symptom-bearing citizens there. So at the island center, the dead and those too sick to protest were burned on giant pyres. So this included the tens of thousands of Venice citizens just dying on the mainland. Those fires would burn once more in 1630 when the Black Death again swept through the city. The small island was used as a mass burial ground, and ashes from human remains make up as much as 50% of the island's soil. Cripes, I hope it's a good fertilizer. The deaths of nearly 160,000 people on the island have given it its nickname, the Island of Ghosts. A doctor at the asylum was known to have experimented on patients with crude lobotomies and jumped from the bell tower in the late 1930s after claiming he had been driven mad by ghosts. Decades later, nearby residents claimed to still hear the bell, although it was removed many years earlier. A report titled Haunted History states that some restoration work had started in recent history but abruptly stopped without explanation. Okay, maybe this is one spot on today's list that I might not want to visit. And in first place, we have St. Elmo in Colorado. St. Elmo is a ghost town and allegedly the best preserved ghost town in all of Colorado, while also boasting the most hauntings and paranormal activity of any ghost town in the state. The town was a major gold and silver trading center and hub of life for many pioneers, outlaws, and miners for decades. So it was originally called Forest City, but St. Elmo was settled in 1878 and became an official township in 1880 with the arrival of the first post office. So the residents of the town were forced to change the name because there were already too many forest cities in the area. So gotta applaud the originality. St. Elmo went through a massive gold rush, reaching the height of its population of 2,000 residents in only 10 days. The majority of the town worked in one of the 4 local mines. The Mary Murphy mine was the most profitable mine and the longest operating, having produced over $60 million worth of gold while it was in operation. When the mines began to close down, the town began to dwindle. The Mary Murphy mine continued to operate until 1922, but was shut down when the railroad was abandoned. Postal service was discontinued in 1952 after the death of St. Elmo's postmaster. Now for the fun part, ghost stories. I saved the best for last for a reason. The most famous ghost of St. Elmo is Annabelle Dirty Annie Stark, not to be confused with the beloved Annabelle doll. This Annabelle is the descendant of Anton and Anna Stark, who arrived in St. Elmo with the Pacific Railroad in 1881. Anton was a section boss in the mines, while Anna ran the Home Comfort Hotel located on Poplar Street and the general store. Oh, and both structures are still standing today. Anna Stark was known as a cruel and harsh woman who never allowed her 3 children, Roy, Tony, and Annabelle, out in the town to mingle